You open those doors right now, or I swear I will bite through your throat." A laugh answered from the corridor, oily and amused. "Listen to her, an Omega with teeth. Someone forgot to teach you your place." "My place is not in a cage. Today it is." The iron bars were not just iron. They were blackened with old blood and etched with runes that pulsed like a slow heartbeat. Every time Velxira Nocktyl tried to push her scent out, to find the invisible edge of another body nearby, the bars drank it. Every time she tried to call her other shape, the answer inside her came back silent, as if a door had been nailed shut. A bell rang outside, distant and triumphant, and the corridor filled with boots. "Move," a guard said, and unlocked the cage with a key that was too clean, too new for something this cruel. "Up, head high. The crowd likes to see the eyes." Velxira rose slowly, hiding the tremor in her knees. The air was cold, but it was not the cold that made her shake. It was the smell. Not her own, not really. The thick, layered scent of 100 bodies packed into stone, of alpha impatience, of heat held back like a knife behind a smile. And underneath that, something worse. Incense and ink and the metallic bite of rune work. She stepped out and the guard's hand grabbed her upper arm, fingers digging in. Her skin crawled with the instinct to snap. The guard leaned closer, breath hot against her ear. "Try it," he whispered. "Try to fight. They will pay extra to watch you break." Velxira bared her teeth. "You will not sell me." "Oh, but we already did," another voice said, and a woman glided into view as if the corridor belonged to her. She wore pale silk and a smile so delicate it looked like kindness until you noticed how little it reached her eyes. "Not to one buyer, of course. That would be vulgar. This is a right, a tradition." Velxira's gaze locked on the woman's mouth. Pretty words. Poison. "What is your name?" Velxira asked, forcing her voice steady. The woman tilted her head. "Iriavan Targress." The name struck the air like a bell. Not a priest, not a guard. Clan nobility, the kind that could stand beside a slaughter and call it order. Velxira swallowed. "Why are you here?" Iriavan's smile sharpened. "To make sure you do not disappoint us." "Us?" "Everyone who came to watch," Iriavan said. "Everyone who came to bid. Everyone who came to hunt." Velxira tried again to reach for her shift, for the muscle memory of claws and fur, for the strength of teeth that did not have to apologize for existing. Nothing. Just that locked door inside her, sealed and quiet. Her throat tightened. "You cannot force a bond." Iriavan's eyes flicked to Velxira's collarbone, and Velxira felt the look like a finger tracing her skin. "We are not forcing anything. We are offering you a chance. A chance to be chased." "A chance to be claimed," Iriavan corrected, and then leaned in, voice soft enough to feel intimate. "You are already someone's. You simply do not know it yet." Velxira's breath hitched. Something about the words hooked into her ribs. A wrongness, like remembering a dream that was not yours. The guard yanked her forward. "Keep moving." They led her down the corridor, past cells filled with shadows, and the low, broken sounds of bodies that had learned pain was a language nobody listened to. Somewhere behind a door, someone howled. Not human, not entirely wolf. A chorus answered, hungry and excited, and the stone itself seemed to vibrate with it. Velxira's pulse hammered. "You hear that?" the guard said, enjoying her fear. "The pack is already tasting you." "I am not food," she said. "Today," he replied, "you are the prize." They emerged into a stairwell that opened onto an arena carved into a cliffside. It was half square, half temple, ringed with torches and banners, and the kind of wealth that did not bother pretending it had clean hands. People wore masks, not to hide shame, but to make cruelty feel like a game. Gold flashed. Jewels glittered. Rings of rune metal gleamed on fingers that would never touch a shovel, only a throat. A platform stood in the center, smeared with old marks that had been scrubbed and repainted too many times. Around it rose wooden stands packed with bodies. Velxira felt them before she truly saw them. The pressure of attention, the heat of hunger, a tide of scent that wanted to drown her. A priest stepped forward, draped in white. His hair was dark, his face too calm. He lifted his hands as if he were blessing a wedding. Malkvorin solves, someone murmured nearby, reverent and afraid. Malkvorin's voice carried without effort. Brothers and sisters of the clans, tonight the right of pursuit renews our pact. Tonight order is proven. Tonight the weak are tested. A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. Velxira's stomach turned. This was not a rite. This was an auction wearing sacred paint. Malkvorin continued, serene. The subject is an Omega without clan. He gestured, and 2 guards hauled Velxira onto the platform. The wood was cold under her bare feet, and the world tilted as 1,000 eyes converged on her at once. Look at her, a voice called. She is too clean. Who kept her hidden? She does not smell, another voice said, confused. Is she sick? Velxira's heart stuttered. That again, the strange absence. She had always been told to keep herself controlled, to keep her scent quiet, to never let it bloom in a room. It had felt like discipline. Now it felt like a lie. Malkvorin raised a hand and the murmurs eased. The council has granted the prize conditions. Should she survive until sunset without being marked, she will be released. A roar of amusement erupted. People threw coins at the platform. A few alphas leaned forward as if they could already taste her skin. Velxira's teeth clenched. Freedom here was bait. It was the prettiest hook in the bloodiest water. She lifted her chin anyway. She would not give them the pleasure of seeing her collapse. Then she felt it. A presence, sharp and cold, slicing through the crowd's heat like winter wind through smoke. Velxira turned her head and saw him. He stood in the front ranks of the hunters, unmasked. Tall. Broad. Still in a way that made everyone around him seem restless and small. His hair was dark, but his eyes looked like frozen starlight. Not pale blue, something deeper. As if the sky itself had been cut and set into his skull. Kaervald Asterion. The name rose in her mind without permission. A leader, a monster, a rumor whispered by frightened mouths. The other alphas stepped away from. He did not move at first. He only watched her with a focus so intense it made her skin prickle. Then his nostrils flared, barely, and his jaw tightened. He was scenting her. Velxira's body reacted before her mind could argue. Heat curled low in her belly, humiliating and furious. Her pulse flickered in her throat. Her knees softened for one heartbeat, as if the world had shifted to make space for him. She hated herself for it. Kaervald took 1 step forward, then another. A hush fell, as if the crowd could sense the edge of something dangerous. Even the torches seemed to crackle more quietly. Kaervald reached the platform's edge. He did not look at Malkvorin, did not acknowledge the priest's authority. His gaze stayed on Velxira as if she was the only real thing in the arena. He leaned in, close enough that she could see the faint scar that cut through one eyebrow. He inhaled, and then he recoiled. It was subtle, but she saw it. A flicker of shock, maybe fear, as if the act of breathing her in had struck him somewhere it hurt. His voice came out low, rough, as if he had not meant to speak at all. No, Velxira's throat tightened. No what? His eyes snapped to hers. For a second, something raw flashed there. Need and restraint braided together like a rope about to snap. Then he stepped back, hands curling into fists at his sides. The crowd breathed again, hungry for drama. Someone laughed. Someone shouted Kaervald's name like a prayer. Malkvorin smiled as if he had expected this. The hunters have been chosen. Wolves, ravens, lynx, serpents. Let all instincts be honored. Velxira's gaze darted across the hunters. She saw the sleek stillness of a raven shifter, eyes too clever. The feline grace of a lynx, lips parted in a grin. A man whose scent was strangely dry, like sun-baked stone, watching her with reptilian patience. And then she saw another. A figure standing slightly apart, calm as a blade sheathed. His gaze was not hungry. It was measuring. Listening, almost, as if he could hear her footsteps before she took them. Sorint Veldrin. He looked at the ground, not at her body, as if her skin did not interest him. That should have been comforting. Instead, it was worse. Hunger you could predict. Calculation was a deeper kind of danger. Velxira forced herself to breathe and glance down. At her collarbone, half hidden by the torn neckline of the dress they had shoved her into, was a mark. A rune. She had seen it before in mirrors but never really understood it. A simple shape, elegant and cruel. It looked like a closed eye. Like a mouth sewn shut. The sealed scent. A memory burst behind her eyes, sudden and bright, firelight. A hand pushing her hair back from her face, a voice shaking. If they smell you, you will not survive. Velxira's chest tightened so hard it hurt. She blinked the memory away, but it left ash behind. Malkvorin lifted a carved horn. 3 minutes, he announced. A gift of mercy. The crowd cheered. Iriavan stepped close to the platform, looking up at Velxira with that knife smile. Beautifully, she murmured. They like it when the prey believes. Velxira leaned down, voice fierce. And you, what do you like? Iriavan's eyes gleamed. I like it when the world is honest about what it is. The horn sounded. Velxira did not hesitate. She sprang from the platform and sprinted toward the archway that led into the forest beyond the arena. Her bare feet slapped stone, then dirt. The air changed, damp and sharp, filled with pine and leaf mold. Behind her, the crowd counted aloud. 1, 2, 3. Their voices faded as she ran. Her lungs burned, her heart pounded. She pushed through ferns and low branches, forcing speed even without her shift. She needed distance. She needed shadow. She needed a place to disappear. But the forest felt wrong. Too perfect. Too symmetrical. Trees spaced like they had been arranged. The moonlight, even in daylight, slanting through the branches with theatrical beauty. Illusion. Velxira's breath caught. She changed direction abruptly, veering left, then right. She counted her steps, watched the patterns of moss on trunks, tried to find anything that proved this place was real. She circled a boulder and saw the same broken branch she had passed a minute earlier. A cold wave washed through her. They had built a maze. A voice behind her amused. Clever legs, wrong world. Velxira spun, backing up, and saw a hunter step from behind a tree. Lynx. He moved like he was already tasting victory. You cannot escape, he said, drawing a blade. There is no edge. Velxira's gaze flicked past him. More movement. Shadows between trees. The hunt had begun before the 3 minutes were truly done. Of course it had. Mercy was theater. Velxira's fingers curled. Still no claws, still no shift. She turned and ran again, refusing to give them her fear in the shape of a scream. The forest blurred. Branches scraped her arms. Her dress tore further. Cold air kissed her skin, and for a moment she felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with fabric. A howl rose, close now, and her blood went cold. She spotted something near the base of an ancient tree, roots like knuckles breaking through soil. And beneath them, a patch of ground that looked disturbed. A seam, a hidden door. Velxira dropped to her knees and dug, fingers clawing at damp dirt. Her nails broke. Pain flared. She kept digging. Her hands found wood, then iron. A latch. A second howl, nearer. The lynx hunter laughed somewhere behind her. Velxira yanked the latch and the door gave with a groan. Cold air rushed up, smelling of stone and old water. Without thinking, she slipped into the opening and pulled it partly closed above her, leaving just enough crack to breathe. Darkness swallowed her. For a heartbeat she crouched, listening. Footsteps passed overhead. A blade scraped against roots as someone searched. Where did she go? Someone hissed. A quieter voice answered, calm, almost bored. Down. Velxira froze. Sorint. The wood above her shifted slightly, as if a hand had brushed it, testing. Then the pressure eased. Silence. Velxira waited until her lungs ached. Then she eased the door open and slid down into the tunnel beneath. The passage was narrow, carved from stone that glittered with old minerals. Water dripped. The air tasted metallic. Runes lined the walls, faintly visible like bones under skin. Some were cracked. Some were smeared with soot. Velxira moved forward, one hand on the wall for balance. Her fingers traced a symbol that made her palm tingle, as if the stone recognized her touch. Ahead, the tunnel widened, revealing an archway carved with a phrase in an ancient script she should not have been able to read. The Pact of the Mark. Her stomach turned. Mark, bond, claim. All the words that had been used to dress ownership in romance. She stepped through the arch. The chamber beyond was larger, and the ceiling vanished into darkness. A faint light came from crystals embedded in the walls, pale and cold. In the center of the chamber lay a circle of broken stone, as if an altar had once stood there and been shattered. Velxira's breath trembled. Something had happened here long ago, something violent, something that had left a bruise on the air, a sound behind her, a footstep that did not echo like a hunter's clumsy rush, a movement too fast, too controlled. Velxira spun and pressed her back to the wall, heart hammering, hands raised like she could fight with broken nails. A man stepped from the shadows. Kaervald, he should not have been here yet. He should have been outside, hunting with the others, enjoying the chase. Instead, he was in the tunnel beneath the illusion forest, his eyes fixed on her as if he had followed a thread only he could see. Velxira's voice came out ragged. "Did they send you?" Kaervald did not answer immediately. His gaze slid over her torn dress, her dirty hands, the scrape on her cheek. His jaw tightened. Then he stepped closer. Velxira pushed herself harder against the wall. "Do not come near me," he stopped at once. It was such an abrupt halt that it almost looked like obedience. Silence stretched between them, thick with things neither of them wanted to say out loud. Velxira forced her lungs to work. "Why are you here?" Kaervald's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "Because the air changed when you breathed." "That makes no sense." "It does," he said, voice low, like a confession he hated. "Your scent is wrong. It is not absent, it is cut. Like someone tore a page out of a book and left the spine." Velxira's fingertips brushed her collarbone over the rune. "You can tell." His eyes flicked to her hand. For a fraction of a second, something hungry flashed across his face. Then it was gone, buried under iron control. "I can tell," he said, "and I can tell someone did it on purpose." Velxira's lips parted, anger and fear tangling. "Then you know why they want me." Kaervald's gaze hardened. "Yes. And yet you are still here." His shoulders rose and fell, slow. "I did not come to take you." Velxira let out a bitter laugh that sounded too loud in the chamber. "Of course you did. You are here because they promised you a prize." Kaervald's voice dropped further. "I am here because someone used rune work on an Omega, and because I want to know who dared." The words should have comforted her. Instead, they made her skin prickle. "You do not get this feared without doing terrible things," she thought. A sound sliced through the air. A whistle. A flicker of light. Kaervald moved. He did not lunge at Velxira. He did not grab her. He turned and threw himself between her and the tunnel entrance. A shaft struck the stone where his head had been a heartbeat earlier and shattered into sparks. The rune on it flared, burning blue. Velxira's breath caught. An arrow. Kaervald's eyes tracked the direction it had come from, pupils narrowing. "Not hunting," he said, and his voice sounded like a growl he was holding back. "Capturing." Velxira stared at the rune on the broken shaft, a symbol like a cage closing. "Plen," she whispered, not knowing how she knew the word. "Ensnare." Another arrow hissed through the dark. Kaervald lifted one hand and the air itself seemed to thicken. The arrow slowed as if it had hit invisible honey, then dropped to the floor with a dull clink. Velxira's throat tightened. Magic, not priest magic, not council rituals. Alpha command made into a weapon. Footsteps pounded from the tunnel. Voices. Excited, vicious. "They went down here. She cannot have gone far." "Kaervald," someone called, eager. "Do not waste time, bring her out." Kaervald's shoulders went rigid. He did not turn toward the voices. His focus stayed on the darkness where the arrows had come from. His lips parted. When he spoke, the sound was not loud, but it hit the chamber like thunder. "Back." The single word carried force, ancient and absolute. Velxira felt it in her bones. The instinct to obey, to lower her eyes, to soften her throat, surged like a tide. She fought it with a snarl in her chest, horrified by her own body's betrayal. Outside the chamber, the footsteps faltered. Someone cursed. Someone muttered a hurried apology. The voices pulled back, retreating up the tunnel as if the stone itself had grown teeth. Silence returned, harsher now. Velxira's hands shook. "How did you do that?" Kaervald turned to her slowly, and his eyes looked almost pained. "The same way they expect me to do everything," he said. "By being what they made me." Velxira swallowed. His words were too human for someone so feared. Another sound, faint. A soft scrape like metal against stone, deeper in the chamber. Kaervald's gaze snapped toward it. His body went still, every muscle ready. Velxira followed his stare and saw a narrow crack in the far wall. A draft slipped through, cold and damp, carrying a smell that made her stomach twist. Incense. Malkvorin's incense. Velxira's voice broke. "He is here." Kaervald's jaw clenched. "He sent the arrows." "So he does not want them to catch me," Velxira whispered, dread blooming. "He wants to take me." Kaervald's eyes returned to her, and for a moment she saw something like fury there, not possessive lust, not hunger, rage, clean and sharp. "Do you know what you are?" he asked. Velxira's laugh came out raw. "A prize, a thing." "No," Kaervald said. "Not that." He stepped closer again, carefully, as if approaching a wild animal he did not want to startle. Velxira's body tensed. Heat licked through her veins, unwanted. Her throat went dry. He smelled like snow and smoke and something darker, something that promised danger and safety in the same breath. He stopped at a respectful distance. His voice lowered. "Do you know why they sealed you?" Velxira's fingers pressed hard against her collarbone. "So I would not be noticed." Kaervald shook his head once. "So you would not be remembered." The words struck her like a slap. Velxira blinked and the chamber seemed to sway. "What does that mean?" "It means someone was afraid of what you are," Kaervald said. "Afraid enough to erase you from the senses of the world." Velxira's breathing turned shallow. A memory rose, sharp as glass. A child's cry, a door slamming. Someone lifting her, running through smoke. A voice whispering a name that was not hers. She grabbed at the wall to stay upright. "Stop," she whispered. "Stop saying things you cannot prove." Kaervald's gaze softened for one heartbeat, and it made her angry because it felt like pity. "I can prove one thing," he said. He inhaled again, and his eyes narrowed as if he were listening with more than ears. Then his face changed, not into a snarl, into a shock he could not hide. Velxira's stomach dropped. "What?" Kaervald's voice came out hoarse. "There is a crack." Velxira froze. "A crack in what?" "In the seal," he said. "Right there." His gaze was fixed on her collarbone. Velxira looked down. The rune that had always looked like a closed eye now glimmered unevenly, as if the lines were no longer perfectly joined. A tiny fracture ran through the center, so fine it was almost a hair. Her heart pounded. That was not there before. Kaervald's throat worked. "It is now." Velxira's fingers trembled as she touched it. The moment her skin met the rune, heat flared under her fingertips, a sting and a thrill at once. The symbol pulsed like it was alive. The fracture brightened, glowing from within. Velxira jerked her hand back, breath-catching. "What did I do?" Kaervald took a slow step back, as if distance could protect him from what was coming. His eyes stayed on the rune, but his voice dropped to something almost reverent. "You woke it." Velxira's mouth went dry. "I do not understand." Kaervald's jaw clenched so hard a muscle jumped. "Neither do I," a shout echoed from the tunnel. Malkvorin's voice, calm and amused. "Kaervald, you cannot hide what the gods have already priced." Velxira's stomach twisted. He was close, too close. Kaervald's gaze flicked to the crack in the wall where incense drifted through. "We have seconds." Velxira stared at him. "We." His eyes snapped to hers. "Do you want to die in a crowd?" She opened her mouth, fury rising. "Do you think the alternative is better?" Kaervald's voice lowered, intense. "The alternative is choice. You can hate me later. You can bite me if you want. But if you stay here, they will not mark you like a mate. They will mark you like a spell." Velxira's breath shook. The words slid under her skin, and a strange ache answered them. Not trust, not yet, but something like recognition of a truth too ugly to deny. Another arrow whistled through the chamber, aimed not at Kaervald this time, but at Velxira's chest. Kaervald moved with impossible speed and caught it midair, bare-handed. The rune on the arrow flared, burning his palm. The smell of scorched skin hit Velxira, and something inside her snapped. "No," Velxira said, voice suddenly deeper, harsher. Kaervald's eyes flicked to her, startled. Velxira did not know what she was doing. She only knew the sight of his burned hand made her chest burn too, made something feral rise behind her ribs. The rune on her collarbone flared bright. Kaervald went still. His pupils dilated, and his throat bobbed as he swallowed hard, as if fighting an instinct that wanted to drag him to his knees. Velxira felt the air change again, not the illusion forest outside. The real air, the old stone, the ancient runes in the walls, they were listening. Velxira's voice came out softer, shaken. "You feel it too." Kaervald's answer was barely a whisper. "Yes." The crack in the seal widened. Velxira stared, helpless, as the rune began to splinter from the inside, like ice breaking on a lake. Malkvorin's voice drifted closer, pleased. "There it is. There is my miracle." Velxira's skin heated, not with shame but with awakening. A pressure built in her chest, behind her tongue, under her skin, as if a scent had been held back for years and was now pounding at the door. Kaervald took another step back, face tight with restraint. "Velxira," he said, and her name in his mouth sounded like a warning and a prayer at once. "If it breaks, they will all know." Velxira's breath came fast. "Then help me stop it." Kaervald's eyes flicked over her face as if trying to choose the safest lie. He did not lie. "I do not know how," he said. The rune on her collarbone split with a sound Velxira felt more than heard, like a sigh of ancient stone, and the world finally inhaled her. Her true aroma surged out in a wave, warm and wild, threaded with something that was not just Omega sweetness, but rune-bright power, like moonlight on fresh blood, like a storm breaking open the sky. For one heartbeat, everything went silent. Then, from above and beyond the chamber, the arena erupted into noise. Shouts, howls, a sudden stampede of bodies reacting to the scent they had been denied. Velxira's knees nearly buckled as the wave rolled through her, exposing her to the world. Kaervald's eyes went dark, and his voice came out rough with agony. "Stars, save us." Velxira lifted her shaking hand to her throat, realizing with horror that this was only the beginning, because now they could smell her, and now she could feel them all answering. "You did not just wake up," Kaervald said, voice rough as stone. "You rang a bell." Velxira clutched her own throat, as if she could physically hold the scent inside. It spilled anyway, warm and bright and terrifying, flooding the chamber and racing up the tunnel like a living thing looking for mouths to fill. From far above, the arena answered with a sound that was not cheering anymore. It was hunger turning into panic. A crash rolled through the stone, then another, like benches overturning. A woman screamed. An alpha howled, not in pleasure but in pain, as if her aroma had hit some old injury inside him and torn it open. Malkvorin's calm voice drifted closer through the crack in the wall, pleased and precise. "Yes, there she is, the breath that was stolen." Velxira's eyes burned. "Make it stop." Kaervald's gaze pinned her, tense, torn. "I cannot, not like this." Footsteps thundered in the tunnel behind them, not the scattered rush of hunters, but disciplined movement. Boots in rhythm, armor clinking. Then the scrape of something heavier being dragged, like a chain or a metal frame. Kaervald's head turned slightly, listening. His face hardened. "They are not chasing," he murmured. "They are closing." Velxira forced her lungs to pull air. The scent made her dizzy, like standing too close to the edge of a cliff. She could feel the crowd above as if they were pressed against her skin, their instincts pressing back, answering her, craving her, hating her. Somewhere in that distant chaos, a voice shouted a single word that cut through everything. Primbeast. The word hit the air like a curse. Even the stone seemed to recoil. Kaervald's jaw clenched. Do not listen. Velxira swallowed hard. What is that? He did not answer fast enough. Another voice above, older and shaking, repeated it. Primbeast, the center that breaks marks. A sudden wave of sound surged, then dipped, as if an authority had stepped into the arena and lifted a hand. Iriavan's voice, sharp and carrying, sliced through the riot. The right is suspended, by council decree. The Omega is property of the council. For a heartbeat, the arena went dead silent, as if even the crowd did not dare breathe against that word, council. Then outrage erupted. Property. The insult was too blunt even for those who came to watch a hunt. They had paid. They had come for sport and tradition and the illusion of rules. Council theft was not entertainment. It was power showing its teeth. The sound became a storm. Velxira's stomach turned. They changed the rules. They always do, Kaervald said. The crack in the wall widened with a whisper of shifting stone. Incense thickened. A pale blue glow bled through, and a figure slid into view as if the wall had been waiting to open for him. Malkvorin stepped into the chamber. Up close, he looked less like a priest and more like a surgeon. His robe was white, but his hands were bare, unadorned, clean in a way that felt obscene. His eyes moved over Velxira as if she were an equation. He smiled softly. Do you feel it, child? The world remembering you. Velxira's nails dug into her own palm. You did this to me. I maintained what was necessary, Malkvorin said. For years you were quiet, safe, and now you are loud, dangerous. Kaervald took a half step forward, placing himself between them without touching Velxira. You sealed her. Malkvorin's gaze flicked to Kaervald with faint amusement. I preserved a key before it could be stolen. Velxira's skin crawled. A key. Malkvorin's smile did not change, but his voice became gentler, as if speaking to a frightened animal. Come with me, voluntarily. I can make the hunger stop. I can give you a veil again. The offer struck her body like a drug. For one shameful heartbeat she wanted it. The relief, the quiet, the not being seen. Then she caught the lie in the edges of his scent, the cold iron note underneath the incense, and her stomach clenched. He did not want to veil her. He wanted to own the veil. Velxira lifted her chin. You will dissect me. Malkvorin's eyes warmed, almost fond. Such a violent word. Kaervald's voice turned low and lethal. Say what you mean. Malkvorin sighed, as if they were being difficult children. I mean I will study what the gods hid in you. I mean I will keep you alive long enough to understand you. Velxira's heart slammed. Alive long enough. Kaervald's hands curled into fists. You will not touch her. Malkvorin's gaze sharpened. You do not get to decide. He lifted 2 fingers. The runes in the chamber flared, answering him. The air tightened. Velxira felt an invisible pressure wrap around her ribs, around her throat, trying to compress her into stillness. Kaervald moved instantly. He slammed his palm onto the broken stone circle in the center of the chamber. The crystals in the walls pulsed. The pressure on Velxira cracked like thin ice and vanished. Malkvorin's eyebrows rose, the first real surprise on his face. You know this place. Kaervald did not look at him. His eyes stayed on Velxira. Run, Velxira's breath caught. With you. Kaervald's jaw tightened, and for a moment she thought he would refuse, that he would tell her to flee while he fought and died here. Instead, he nodded once. Yes, Malkvorin's voice sharpened. Kaervald, if you take her, you take the curse with her. Kaervald's mouth twisted. I already live with curses. He grabbed a loose stone from the shattered circle and flung it at the crystals. It struck, and the chamber's cold light flickered. In that flicker, Kaervald lunged to Velxira, not to seize her, but to wrap a heavy cloak around her shoulders. It smelled like him, snow and smoke, and something older, bone deep. At the edge of the cloak's clasp hung a small amulet, carved from pale bone, etched with a spiral. Kaervald's fingers brushed her collarbone for half a second as he fastened it. The touch was controlled, careful, but Velxira's body still jolted as if the contact had sparked through her nerves. His voice came out strained. "That bone holds a hush, a thin one. It will not hide you, but it will blur you." Velxira swallowed, dizzy with the closeness. "Why help me?" His eyes held hers, dark with restraint. "Because I did not come to hunt you. I came to find who dared to seal you, and now I have." Malkvorin's smile returned, quiet and vicious. "Then you came too late." Kaervald's hand closed around Velxira's wrist. His grip was firm but not painful, and he waited a fraction of a heartbeat, as if giving her a chance to pull away. Velxira did not pull away. They ran. Kaervald led her through a narrow side passage that Velxira had not noticed before, a seam in the stone that opened when he pressed his palm to a particular rune. The wall slid aside, cold air spilling out. Behind them, Malkvorin's voice rose, not angry, but commanding. "Bring them." The tunnel turned steep and tight. Velxira's bare feet slipped on damp stone, and Kaervald shifted his hold, pulling her closer, guiding her, never lifting her off the ground as if she were a doll, never treating her weight as inconvenience. Her scent still leaked, but the bone amulet dulled the sharpest edge. The world's response softened from a scream into a throbbing ache. They burst out into open air, not the forest maze. The arena's underbelly, a stone corridor that ran beneath the stands. Torches smoked along the walls. Shadows flickered. Screams echoed above, and the floor trembled as the crowd stampeded. Velxira saw bodies rushing past openings in the wall, masked nobles pushing each other like animals. Guards tried to form lines and failed. Someone fell and disappeared under feet. A hand grabbed for Velxira from the side. Kaervald snapped his elbow out, and the hand recoiled with a cry. He did not stop running. "Kaervald," a voice called behind them, breathless, familiar. "Sorint." Velxira turned her head and saw him moving through chaos with unsettling calm, as if he had already mapped every possible exit. He caught up with them in 3 strides and grabbed Velxira's other hand, not yanking, but anchoring her. "If you stay in this building," Sorint said, voice flat with urgency, "you will be torn apart, not metaphor." Velxira's throat went tight. She believed him because he did not sound dramatic. He sounded precise. Kaervald snarled, not at Sorint, but at the corridor ahead. "They are here." Velxira followed his stare. A line of council guards stepped into view, blocking the corridor like a door made of bodies. Their armor was dark, edged in rune metal. Their helms hid their faces, but even without seeing eyes, Velxira felt something wrong. No scent, not controlled scent, no scent at all. Sorint's grip tightened. "Shells," he said. "Empty." The guards moved in unison, too perfect. Their heads turned at the same angle. Their steps landed at the same time. Runes glowed along their neck plates, pulsing like heartbeats that were not truly theirs. Velxira's stomach rolled. "They are not alive. They are not fully dead either," Kaervald said. His voice turned colder. "Do not let them touch you." One shell lifted its hand. A rune flared, and the air between them hardened like glass. Kaervald shoved Velxira back a step and struck the invisible barrier with his palm. The barrier rippled, then cracked. Not because he was stronger, but because he spoke a word that made the rune hesitate. Velxira felt the word more than heard it. Old command. Pack language older than the council. The barrier shattered. Sorint pulled Velxira forward. "Now." They sprinted straight into the gap as the shells tried to reform the wall. A gauntlet grazed Velxira's sleeve, and cold shot through her arm like frost biting into bone. She gasped. Kaervald's hand clamped around her forearm at once, grounding her, and the cold eased, not gone, but held back. "Do not look at them," he said, voice tight. "They are designed to make you feel small." Velxira forced her eyes forward and ran. The corridor forked. Sorint did not hesitate. He chose the left path as if he could smell the right answer. "How?" Velxira panted. Sorint's voice stayed even. "The air is moving." The crowd above is pushing it. That direction leads out. Behind them, a metallic clatter rose. The shells were following, steps in rhythm like a drumbeat. Above them, the roar of the arena shifted again, a new sound entering the chaos. A chant, "Council, council, council." It was not the crowd. It was planted. It was a spell with mouths. Velxira's skin prickled. They are taking control. Sorint's gaze flicked to her collarbone. And they are taking aim at you. They burst out through a service arch into the open. The illusion forest shimmered at the edge of the arena grounds, beautiful and false. Beyond it, real hills rolled under a bruised sky. Smoke from the torches smeared the air. The smell of blood and sweat and spilled wine thickened behind them. Kaervald did not lead them into the forest maze. He led them along the arena's outer wall, toward a narrow path carved into the cliffside. Velxira stumbled on loose stone, and Kaervald's arm wrapped around her waist for a moment, steadying her. The touch was brief. Still her body reacted, heat curling, instinct pressing her closer. She hated the involuntary softness it pulled from her, hated that it felt like relief. She forced herself to step away as soon as she had balance. Kaervald noticed, and he did not chase the contact. He simply nodded once as if acknowledging a boundary without making her say it aloud. Footsteps pounded behind them. A shout rose. "Stop, by council decree." Sorint's eyes narrowed. "Do not stop." Velxira's breath came hard. "Where are we going?" Kaervald's voice was clipped. "The old Pack Temple." Sorint shot him a look. "You mean the Forbidden One?" "Yes." Velxira's heart lurched. "Forbidden to whom?" Kaervald glanced at her. "Omegas, especially Omegas with sealed scents." Velxira swallowed. "So you are taking me to the one place I am not allowed." Kaervald's mouth tightened. "Exactly." They rounded a bend, and the temple came into view, half carved into the cliff, half built from black stone that looked like it had drunk too many fires. Its entrance was an arch shaped like fangs. Old carvings crawled along the columns, worn by time and the hands of those who remembered. Velxira felt it before she stepped inside. This place did not see her as prey. It saw her as something that belonged, and the recognition made her skin prickle. Sorint slowed, eyes scanning. No guards. Kaervald's gaze remained sharp. No living guards. They crossed the threshold. Cold rushed over Velxira like water. The air smelled of ash and old fur and something faintly sweet, like dried flowers pressed between pages. Torches flared on their own along the walls, as if the temple had been waiting for them to arrive. Velxira's breath caught. Kaervald watched her reaction, then looked away as if it hurt him to see. "Do not trust it," he murmured. "This place remembers too much." They moved deeper. The inner hall opened into a wide chamber, and Velxira stopped so abruptly Sorint nearly collided with her. In the center stood an altar, or what remained of one. It had been split down the middle with a violence that left jagged edges. The stone was scorched and cracked, and the runes carved into it looked like broken teeth. Above it, carved into the wall in ancient script, was a sentence that made Velxira's throat tighten as she read it. "A mark without consent is a curse on the bloodline." Velxira stared. The words felt like hands around her heart. Kaervald's voice turned low. "That is why they forbade Omegas, not because the place is unclean, because it tells the truth." Sorint moved to the edge of the chamber and knelt, palm hovering just above the floor. "Footprints," he said. "Recent." Kaervald's head lifted. "Council." Sorint nodded once. "And others, hunters, panic. They searched this place." Velxira's fingers brushed her collarbone under the cloak. The cracked rune throbbed, alive and sensitive. She turned on Kaervald, fury rising again, hot and raw. "You knew." Kaervald met her gaze without flinching. "I suspected." "You came to the ritual to find who sealed me," Velxira said, voice shaking. "That is what you said." "That is why I was there," he replied. "And if you found them," Velxira demanded, "what then?" Kaervald's jaw flexed. "Then I would have ended it." The bluntness of the answer stole Velxira's breath. Sorint's voice cut in, calm and edged. Argue later. They are tracking the scent wave. It will lead them here unless we mask it. Velxira's mouth went dry. I cannot. Sorint rose and began drawing a circle on the floor with a small pouch of dark powder, his movements precise. I can blur the edges, not hide you, delay them. Kaervald stepped back from Velxira, one hand raised slightly as if showing he would not touch. Tell me what you need, he said, and tell me what you do not want. Velxira's throat tightened. No one asked that in a place like this. Not an alpha, not here. She swallowed hard. Do not come close unless I say. Do not bite, do not mark. Kaervald's eyes darkened, not with anger, but with something that looked like pain held in check. Agreed. The word landed like a stone, heavy, real. Velxira's breath trembled. Why are you like this? Kaervald's gaze slid to the broken altar. Because I have seen what happens when power pretends it is love. Sorint finished the circle and pressed his palm to the floor. The powder sank into the stone-like ink into skin. A faint shimmer rose, and the air around Velxira's scent shifted, as if it had been folded into a quieter shape. Velxira exhaled shakily. Relief did not come. The ache of being smelled by the world still pulsed in her veins. A flicker of memory struck her, sudden, bright, brutal. A small room. A woman singing under her breath. Fingers brushing Velxira's hair back. A whispered name, not Velxira. Her vision blurred. She grabbed the edge of a stone pillar. My childhood, she whispered. It is wrong. Kaervald went still. Sorint's eyes lifted, sharp. Velxira squeezed her eyes shut, trying to pull the memory back by force. More fragments surfaced, like bones rising through swamp water. A door, a rune knife. Someone crying, saying, do it now or she will be hunted forever. Velxira's stomach clenched. They did not save me. Kaervald's voice was careful. What do you remember? Velxira opened her eyes. I remember love that feels rehearsed. I remember kindness with a script. Sorint's mouth tightened. Planted memory. Velxira stared at him. You believe me. I believe patterns, Sorint said, and your reactions do not match the story they gave you. A sound echoed from outside the temple, faint but rising, metal footsteps, the shells. Kaervald's head turned toward the entrance. They found the trail faster than I hoped. Sorint's gaze flicked to the ceiling, then the walls, measuring. We have minutes. Velxira's hands shook. She tried to call her shift again, desperate for the strength of teeth and claws. Something answered. Not a gentle unfolding, not a familiar stretch of muscle and fur. A surge, heat tore through her bones, her spine arched, her breath ripped out of her throat. Pain, sharp and clean, lanced down her arms as her fingers lengthened. Claws slid out. They were not ordinary. They looked kissed by moonlight, pale and slightly translucent, and along them ran faint rune lines that pulsed with each heartbeat. Velxira stared, horrified and mesmerized. I can shift, she breathed, but it feels like too much. Kaervald's gaze locked on her claws, his face tightened. Stop, do not let it run away with you. Velxira tried to retract them. They did not retract. They flexed as if the claws belonged to something that had been asleep too long and now refused to go back into the dark. Velxira's breathing turned ragged. I cannot. Sorint stepped closer, then stopped, careful not to crowd. Breathe slower, he said. You are feeding it panic. Velxira forced air in and out, counting. Her claws trembled. The stone beneath her palms scratched as she tried to steady herself. A faint glow appeared in the scratch. Velxira froze. The mark she had accidentally carved into the pillar was not a gouge. It was a rune, perfectly formed, as if her claw had written, not torn. The temple's torches flared in response, and the broken altar seemed to hum. Kaervald's breath caught. His knees hit the stone with a hard sound. He dropped to one knee, not from injury, not from fear, from instinct. Velxira stared at him, shock burning through her. Get up. Kaervald's jaw clenched as if he were fighting his own body. He lifted his head, eyes dark, voice hoarse. This should not happen. Velxira's throat tightened. What should not happen? Kaervald's gaze flicked to her collarbone. to the cracked seal that now looked like a shattered eyelid. An Omega should not make an altar answer. An Omega should not write rune law with a claw. He swallowed hard, as if the next words were dangerous to say aloud. An Omega should not pull a knee from an Alpha who does not kneel. Velxira's heart slammed. The air between them felt charged, intimate in a way that terrified her more than the hunt. Sorint's voice snapped them back to reality. Later, we are surrounded. The temple doors boomed once, twice, as something heavy struck them. A calm voice came through the stone, smooth and amused. Velxira Nocktyl, you are inside the old truth house. How poetic. Malkvorin. Velxira's blood went cold. Kaervald rose slowly from his knee, eyes like winter. He did not step toward Velxira. He stepped toward the door, putting space between her and the threat. Malkvorin continued, voice warm as poison. Open the doors. No one needs to be hurt. I will offer you a dignified arrangement. Velxira's lips peeled back. Arrangement. Yes, Malkvorin said. A voluntary examination. Cooperation. In return, protection, a veil, a name, a controlled life. Velxira tasted the lie again, sharp, her stomach twisted. Sorint leaned toward her, quiet. Examination means they cut the rune system out of you. Slowly. They call it research. Velxira's hands shook. Then no. Kaervald spoke toward the door, voice steady. Leave. Malkvorin chuckled. Think you can keep her. You cannot even keep your own pack obedient anymore. Sorint's eyes narrowed. He is stalling. They are placing anchors. As if to confirm it, the stone beneath Velxira's feet vibrated. A faint pulse traveled through the floor, like a net being tightened underwater. Sorint moved to the far wall and pressed his ear to it. They are drawing a containment grid around the temple. If it completes, we are trapped. Kaervald scanned the chamber, then the broken altar. There is a way out. Sorint's gaze sharpened. The old passage. Kaervald nodded once. Behind the altar. Velxira swallowed, forcing herself to move even as her claws tingled with too much power. They circled the broken altar, and Kaervald pressed his burned palm, still blistered from catching the rune arrow, against a seam in the stone. Velxira noticed the raw red of his skin and felt something twist inside her, hot and furious, protective in a way she did not want to admit. The stone slid aside. A narrow stairway descended into darkness. A cold draft rose, carrying damp air and a faint smell of old fur. Sorint went first, then Velxira, then Kaervald, closing the stone behind them. The noise above dulled, but the temple's hum followed them down the stairs like a heartbeat. The passage opened into a wider tunnel, lined with ancient carvings. The floor was uneven, scattered with debris that looked like broken pottery, splintered wood, and something darker. Velxira's foot nudged a curved piece of bone. She froze. More bones lay ahead, huge ones, ribs as thick as her thigh, a skull the size of a boulder, cracked and hollow. Velxira's breath came out in a whisper. A guardian. Sorint's face tightened. There was a beast bound to protect the passage. Kaervald's gaze swept the bones. Bound. Velxira swallowed hard. Then why is it dead? Sorint crouched, lifting a fragment carefully. On the bone's surface, burned into it, was a symbol. A council mark. Velxira's stomach dropped. They killed it. Kaervald's voice went flat, dangerous. Recently. Sorint rose, eyes hard. Which means the council already found this route. They are not improvising. They planned for you to come here. Velxira's skin prickled. The feeling of being hunted shifted into something worse, being guided. Malkvorin's voice echoed faintly from somewhere above, as if carried through hidden vents. You cannot outrun a design, Velxira. You are built into it. Velxira's throat tightened. Stop calling me that. The tunnel ahead curved, and the air suddenly changed. It grew thick, sweet, and wrong. Smoke drifted toward them, low to the ground, shimmering with rune dust. Sorint cursed softly. Rune powder. Kaervald's shoulders went rigid. He inhaled once, then his eyes darkened. His jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might crack. Velxira felt it too, a tug under her skin, like instincts being poked awake with a hot needle. Heat rose in her belly, not pleasure exactly, but urgency, restless and sharp. The scent of Kaervald beside her became unbearable, like a promise her body wanted to chase. Kaervald stopped abruptly and turned his face away from her. "Do not come closer," he said, voice strained. "Not now." Velxira's claws trembled. "The smoke is doing this." Sorint grabbed a cloth and tied it over his mouth and nose, then offered another to Velxira. "It strips control," he said. "It turns shifters into teeth." Velxira took the cloth and pressed it to her face, but the sweet wrongness still seeped in. Kaervald's breathing turned heavier. His hands shook. Velxira's heart pounded. She had seen him command stone, stop arrows, make hunters retreat with a word. Now he looked like a man wrestling something inside himself that did not care about strength or will. Kaervald swallowed hard. "Velxira, listen to me." She forced her eyes to his. His gaze was wild at the edges, but still present, still choosing. "Tie my hands," he said. Velxira's breath caught. "What, now?" Kaervald rasped. "Before the smoke finishes." Sorint's eyes widened slightly, then he nodded once, grim approval. He tossed Velxira a length of cord from his belt, thick and worn. Velxira stared at Kaervald, heart hammering. "You could break it." "Yes," Kaervald said. "And if I do, you run." The tunnel trembled with distant movement. Shell steps. The containment grid above tightening. Malkvorin's laughter faint and pleased. Velxira's throat burned. "Why would you let me bind you?" Kaervald's voice went lower, raw. "Because I would rather be bound by your hands than become their weapon." Something in her chest cracked open, painful and hot. Velxira stepped closer, careful, and Kaervald stood perfectly still, as if any sudden movement might snap his control. She wrapped the cord around his wrists once, twice, pulling it tight. His skin was hot. Too hot. His scent hit her like a wave, and her body answered with a humiliating rush of need. She clenched her teeth until her jaw ached. Kaervald's eyes fluttered for a fraction of a second, then fixed on her face as if her expression was the only anchor he had. He did not lean in. He did not take. He held still and let her finish. Velxira tied the knot. Her fingers shook. Kaervald exhaled slowly. "Good." Sorint's voice was sharp. "Move. The shells will not be affected by the smoke. They will walk through it and watch you lose your mind." Velxira swallowed hard and forced her legs forward. They moved deeper into the tunnel as the rune powder thickened behind them like a creeping tide. Velxira waited for it to hit her the way it hit Kaervald, to strip her down to instinct, to make her body betray her completely. It did not. The smoke tugged at her, yes, whispering at her blood, trying to pull her into the same helpless heat, but it slid off something in her like water off oiled cloth. Velxira blinked, confused. "It is not working." Sorint glanced at her sharply. "How?" Velxira shook her head, breath uneven. "I do not know." Kaervald's voice was strained but steady. "Because you are older than their tricks." Velxira's stomach clenched. Older. A new sensation bloomed inside her, deeper than scent, deeper than claws. A pressure behind her ribs, like a second heart waking. Her vision blurred at the edges. The tunnel's carving seemed to shift, lines rearranging themselves as if trying to form a message. Velxira stumbled, catching herself against the wall. Kaervald jerked forward instinctively, bound hands lifting as if to steady her, then stopping because he could not touch. "Velxira," he said, harsh with fear he tried to hide. "What is wrong?" She pressed her palm to the stone, and the runes under her hand warmed as if recognizing her skin. Her cracked collarbone rune pulsed in response. Then she heard it. Not a sound in the tunnel. A sound inside her. A voice low and layered as if multiple throats spoke in perfect unison. "Return." Velxira's breath stopped. Kaervald's eyes widened. "What?" Velxira swallowed, throat tight, mind spinning. "There is a voice." Sorint's face went still. "A spell." Velxira shook her head, horror rising. "No, not like Malkvorin. This is ancient." The voice inside her spoke again, closer now, like lips against the inside of her skull. "Return. You are the key to the gate." Velxira's knees nearly buckled. Kaervald stepped closer despite the cord, bound hands trembling, his face pale under the torchlight. "Tell me where it is pulling you," he said, voice tight. "Tell me, and I will take you away from it." Velxira looked at him, and the sight of his restraint, his willingness to be bound, made her chest ache. "I do not know where," she whispered, "but it knows me." Behind them, the first shell stepped into view at the curve of the tunnel, armor gleaming dully, runes on its neckplate pulsing. It raised its hand, and the rune on its palm lit like a cold star. Velxira's claws flexed on their own. Inside her, the ancient voice breathed, satisfied. "Finally." "Finally," Velxira whispered, and the word did not feel like hers. The shell raised its rune-lit palm. Cold light spilled across the tunnel stones and tried to press into her chest like a brand. Kaervald tugged against the cord around his wrists, instinct and fury making his shoulders shake. "Velxira, do not listen to it. Look at me," she tried. The ancient voice inside her slid under his words like water under a door. "Return. You are the key to the gate." The shell stepped forward. Its armor did not scrape the floor. It moved like a thought-wearing metal. Another shell appeared behind it, then another, their neck runes pulsing in perfect rhythm. Sorint drew a small blade and then stopped, like the act of fighting them in steel suddenly felt childish. "They are not here to kill," he said. "They are here to carry." The first shell's hand opened, fingers spreading. A circle of pale rune light bloomed on the floor between them, a flat disc that hummed and vibrated like a drumhead. Velxira felt her scent tug toward it, pulled as if the circle could grab aromas the way a hand grabs hair. Kaervald's voice turned ragged. "It is a collector seal." "Step back." Velxira's claws flexed. The rune lines along them pulsed in answer. And her body did not step back. Her body leaned forward. Her heart slammed in panic. "No." She tried to order her muscles. They obeyed only halfway. The voice inside her repeated, softer now, almost tender. "Return, return." She took one step. Kaervald jerked forward as far as the cord allowed, bound hands lifted, as if he could block her without touching. His face was tight with restraint that looked like pain. "If you step into that circle, they will lock you like a door." Velxira's throat tightened. She forced her gaze away from the disc and onto his eyes. The world steadied for one heartbeat. Then the tunnel behind the shells filled with a new scent, incense over iron, calm over rot. Malkvorin's voice drifted to them through the corridor, as if the stone itself carried it. "There she is, my lost hymn." Sorint's jaw tightened. "He is too close." Kaervald's nostrils flared, and his expression changed from restraint into something colder. He brought an anchor. Velxira did not understand until she felt it, a vibration running through the floor, faint and steady, like a net tightening. The temple's containment grid had followed them down here. It was not just around the temple. It was reaching for her through the tunnels like roots. Malkvorin continued, pleasant as a smile. "Velxira, you are tired. Come back. I will soften the hunger. I will hush the world for you." Her belly clenched at the word hush. A traitorous craving for quiet flickered through her. Kaervald saw it and did not shame her. He simply spoke, low and direct. "He is offering you a cage that feels like relief." Velxira's breath shook. "I know." Sorint's gaze darted to her claws, to the runes under her skin. "If you can write runes with a touch, then write one now." Velxira swallowed. "I do not know how." "You do," Sorint said, calm but urgent. "Your body knows. Ask it for a door, not a fight." The shell stepped closer, its palm rune flaring brighter. Velxira's spine tingled. The ancient voice inside her swelled with satisfaction, as if she was about to do something it had waited centuries to see. Kaervald's voice dropped into a hard whisper. "Velxira, your choice. Right now, do you want to be taken?" The question sliced through the haze like cold water. Choice. Not instinct. Not magic. Not fate. Her lungs burned. She stared at the glowing disc and felt the pull in her bones. Then she looked at Kaervald's bound hands, the raw burn on his palm. and the way he still held himself back from touching her unless she asked. That restraint felt like the only clean thing in a world of hands and claims. "No," she said. The word hit the air, and the tunnel answered. Heat surged from her collarbone down her arms into her claws. She lifted her hand and raked her claw lightly across the stone wall, not in panic, not in rage. In decision, a rune carved itself into the stone in a single stroke. A simple symbol, a bar across a circle, a shut mouth. The light from the shell's palm flickered. Sorint's eyes widened. Mute! The collector seal on the floor stuttered, its hum turning into a choked rattle. It tried to pull her scent again and found nothing to grip, like a hand closing on smoke. The shell froze for a heartbeat. Kaervald exhaled harsh. Good, again. Velxira's body moved without fear now. She stepped sideways and scratched the same rune onto the floor, then onto the stone beside the collector disc. Each time she wrote it, the shell's light dimmed, as if her symbol was cutting the spell's tongue. Malkvorin's calm voice sharpened slightly. Interesting. The shells twitched, not in unison anymore. Their perfect rhythm slipped. Sorint grabbed Kaervald's bound wrists and yanked him forward. Now, while they are confused, they ran. The tunnel narrowed, then split into two dark throats. Sorint did not hesitate. He chose the right passage, his hand brushing the wall as if listening with his fingertips. Velxira followed, breath tearing, claws tapping stone. Kaervald came last, moving fast despite his bound hands, his shoulders hunched like a wolf forced to run without teeth. Behind them the shells resumed movement, slower now, their steps no longer perfect. The mute runes Velxira had carved were not stopping them. They were buying seconds. The passage sloped downward, and the air changed. The incense faded. Dampness thickened. A smell rose up that made Velxira's stomach knot. Stagnant water and rotting leaves. They spilled out of a crack in the cliffside into open night. Velxira staggered and sucked in air like she had been drowning. The sky was bruised purple and the moon hung low and red, as if someone had painted it with a warning. Below the cliff, a wide stretch of bogland glittered with black water. Thin trees rose from it like ribs. Mist drifted in sheets, crawling low and slow. Sorint looked at the moon and went still for half a heartbeat. Red moon. Kaervald's voice was flat. Bad timing. Velxira hugged the cloak tighter around herself, more for grounding than warmth. Where are we? Sorint pointed into the marsh. Night bogs, no council patrol likes them. The ground eats tracks and the mist eats scent. Kaervald turned his head toward the cliff crack behind them. Not enough. He will send shells through rock if he must. Sorint's gaze flicked to Kaervald's bound wrists. We should cut him loose. Kaervald's eyes stayed on Velxira. He did not ask. He waited. Velxira's throat tightened. She had tied the cord. She should be the one to decide. She stepped close enough to smell him again, snow and smoke and a dangerous steadiness that made her body want to lean in. She hated the reflex and still could not deny it was there. You asked me to bind you, she said softly. Are you safe now? Kaervald's jaw flexed. The rune powder is fading. But the red moon will stir instincts. Mine too, Velxira swallowed. If I cut you free and you lose control. His eyes met hers, dark and clear. Then you run, and I will crawl away from you if I have to. It was not romance. It was a vow made of restraint. Velxira's fingers shook as she loosened the knot. The cord fell away. Kaervald flexed his wrists once and then deliberately lowered his hands at his sides, as if proving he would not reach for her just because he could. Sorint moved first, stepping into the bog with the ease of someone who has walked death traps in the dark. He found a line of drier ground, a hidden path made of roots and peat. Velxira followed, careful. The mud tried to steal her feet. Mist kissed her cheeks, cold and wet. In it, the world felt quieter, as if the bog was swallowing the echoes of the arena and the temple. Her scent still leaked, but it did not flare as violently here. The mist blunted it. The bone amulet at her throat blurred it further. For the first time since the seal broke, She could breathe without feeling 1,000 mouths opening somewhere. They moved deeper into the marsh. The red moon climbed. Velxira began to feel the ancient voice inside her again, not as loud as in the tunnel, but present, like a hand resting on the back of her neck. Return. She clenched her jaw and kept walking. After a time, Sorint stopped and crouched, pressing his palm to a patch of mud. He listened. Kaervald watched him, shoulders tense. What? Sorint's voice was quiet, not shells. Velxira's skin prickled. Then what? Sorint lifted his head. Shifters. A howl rolled through the bog, distant but closing fast, not a pack howl, not a living, thinking call. It sounded empty, like a throat used as an instrument. Kaervald's face tightened. Bessary, Velxira frowned, fear rising. What is that? Gray without self, Sorint said. They used to be people. Now they are rune-driven. The mist ahead shifted. Shapes moved between the thin trees, low and fast. Too many. Velxira's heart pounded. We cannot fight a pack. Kaervald's gaze slid to her claws. Maybe you can, she swallowed hard. I do not want to. The first of them emerged into view. A wolf shape, but wrong. Its fur was gray and dull, its eyes flat and pale. Runes glowed faintly under its skin along its ribs and jaw, as if someone had drawn lines on it and then stuffed it with hunger. It sniffed the air, head tilting toward Velxira. Then it screamed. The sound tore through the bog like a blade. The others answered at once, a chorus of broken throats. They charged. Kaervald stepped in front of Velxira instinctively. Run! Sorint grabbed Velxira's elbow. Left, there is a ridge of roots. Velxira tried to run, but the first Bessary leaped. Kaervald caught it midair and slammed it into the mud. It did not whine. It did not flinch. It snapped its jaws at his throat like a machine. Kaervald bared his teeth. He did not kill it. He hesitated. Velxira saw why. For a fraction of a heartbeat, the Bessary's eyes flickered, and behind the flat pale there was terror. A human awareness trapped under rune control. Velxira's stomach turned. They are inside. Kaervald's voice came out harsh. Yes. Another Bessary hit Sorint, knocking him sideways. Sorint rolled and came up with his blade in hand, cutting not flesh but the glowing rune line along its shoulder. The rune sputtered. The Bessary stumbled, suddenly clumsy, as if one of its strings had snapped. Sorint shouted, "Cut the lines, do not pierce deep." Kaervald slammed his elbow into a Bessary's skull and shoved it away. More poured through the mist. Velxira backed up, chest heaving, claws trembling. Her body wanted to shift fully. The pressure inside her ribs, that second heart, pounded. Return. The voice inside her was not pleading now. It was commanding. Velxira squeezed her eyes shut. Stop. A Bessary lunged toward her, jaws open. She did not think, she shifted. It was not like the stories of soft fur and familiar bones rearranging gently. It was a flood. Light and shadow ripping through her muscles. Her spine arched, her vision sharpened. The world turned into scents and heat and mist currents. Her body dropped to all fours. She was a wolf, not gray, not black, not white. She looked like a pale shadow made solid, fur shimmering as if moonlight lived under it. Rune markings threaded through her coat in faint lines that pulsed with each breath. The Bessary froze mid-lunge. It lowered its head, confused, as if something older than its runes had just spoken into its blood. Velxira did not feel triumph. She felt cold, because she did not just look different. She felt different, centered, heavy with authority that did not ask permission. Her throat vibrated, and a sound came out that was not a howl. It was a note. A single tone that rolled through the mist and the mud, through bone and rune alike. The Bessary pack stopped, all of them. They stood in a wide circle, heads lowered, trembling. Some whined faintly as if the note hurt. Kaervald stared at her, eyes wide, breath caught. Fear was in his face, but it was not fear of being attacked. It was fear of what she was. Sorint's gaze was equally sharp, but his fear looked different. Less personal. More like a man watching a storm form and calculating how far it will reach. Velxira tried to move. The bog was suddenly easy under her paws. Her body knew where to step, where the ground would hold. The Bessary backed away from her, not fleeing, submitting. Velxira should have felt relief. Instead, she felt sick. "I did not do anything," she tried to say, but it came out as a low rumble. The note in her throat trembled again, threatening to spill. The Bessary pack began to shake, as if their runes were struggling against something older. Velxira's heart slammed. She did not want to command them. She did not want to be a leash. She forced herself to breathe slowly to soften the pressure in her chest. The note faded. The Bessary blinked like waking. One of them, closest to Kaervald, turned and ran into the mist. The others followed, scattering in broken silence. Velxira stood in the bog, trembling. Kaervald took one careful step toward her, then stopped, respecting the space even now. Velxira. Her ears flicked at her name. Sorint approached more slowly, eyes narrowed, voice low. "Can you shift back?" Velxira tried. Her bones resisted, as if the wolf shape was not a disguise but a truth her body wanted to stay in. She gritted her teeth, the act sending a sharp pain through her jaw, and forced the change. Light and shadow folded. Her body rose back into human shape, cloak slipping, claws still faintly glowing. She swayed. Kaervald moved instantly, then stopped himself an inch away, hands hovering. "May I?" The question made her chest ache. Velxira nodded once. Kaervald's hands settled on her shoulders, warm and steady, not grabbing, not claiming. He held her upright as if she were precious and breakable, not property. Velxira's breath shook. "They stopped when I made that sound." Kaervald's voice was hoarse. "Yes." Sorint wiped mud from his cheek, eyes still on her. "You did not win with claws, you won with center." Velxira swallowed. Center. Kaervald looked away for a second, as if the words tasted like ash. "That is what they call it in the old law, the one the council buried." Velxira's throat tightened. "Primbeast." Kaervald flinched at the word. "Do not say it loudly, the world listens." Velxira laughed once, bitter and shaking. "It already is. Malkvorin is coming. He sent shells and Bessary like hounds." Sorint's voice was clipped. "We move. There is a place the council cannot see well. Deaf Edge." Velxira looked at him. "Where?" Sorint gestured toward the deeper bog. "Beyond the marsh, past the drowned stones, there are exiles who live masked. Their ground is cursed against council runes, not perfect, but better than this." Kaervald's gaze hardened. "Then we go." They walked until the bog thinned into a forest of stunted pines. The mist remained, but the ground grew firmer. The red moon watched them through thin branches like an eye that would not close. Velxira's body felt wrung out. Her scent throbbed quietly, and her skin still hummed with leftover power from the note she had made. She wanted to curl into a hole in the earth and hide from herself. They stopped near a low hill where dead leaves had piled into a dry pocket. Sorint gathered wood with quick hands. Kaervald did not move far from Velxira, but he also did not crowd her. When Sorint lit the fire, the flame burned low and blue for a moment, as if even fire was cautious here. Then it steadied into ordinary orange. Velxira stared at it, palms held out, trying to feel human again. Kaervald sat opposite her, leaving a respectful distance. His face in the firelight looked older than it had in the arena, the edges of control carved deep. Sorint sat slightly off to the side, back against a tree, blade across his knees, eyes scanning the dark between trunks. For a while nobody spoke. Then Velxira's voice cracked the silence. "You felt it, in the bog." Kaervald's gaze lifted. "Yes, the pull," she said, hating how small the word was, "between us." His jaw tightened. "Yes." Velxira's stomach clenched. "Is it the smoke? Is it the red moon? Is it because they sealed me?" Kaervald stared into the fire for a long moment, then looked at her. "It is real, and it is dangerous, because the world will tell you it means you owe me." Velxira's throat tightened. "Do you think I do?" His eyes held hers, and the heat in his gaze was not ownership. It was hunger under chains, and a gentleness he fought to keep present. "No," he said, You owe no one your throat, not even if your body screams otherwise. Velxira's breath trembled. Then what do you want? Kaervald swallowed hard. I want to be near you. I want to touch you. I want to know what sound you make when you are safe, and I will not take any of it unless you choose it. Her eyes burned. The words were intimate in a way that made her feel naked without anyone undressing her. Velxira's voice went thin. You are an alpha. Everyone says you are a monster. Kaervald's mouth twisted. Everyone is right about the monster part. They are wrong about who I eat. Sorint's voice cut in, calm and steady, like a rope thrown to someone drowning. Your scent does something to more than hunger. It does something to memory, to law. I hear it too. Velxira turned toward him, startled. You do. Sorint nodded once. Not like Kaervald, not like instinct pulling at the throat. For me, it is like a song that shows paths. It makes patterns easier to see. It does not command me, it informs. Velxira's pulse slowed a fraction. So I am different to each of you. Kaervald's gaze stayed on her, intense. Yes. Sorint's eyes flicked briefly to Kaervald, then back to Velxira. And that difference matters. It means what is happening is not a simple bond. It is older. Velxira hugged her knees under the cloak. Older than what? Kaervald's voice was quiet. Older than the council. Older than the current clans. Old enough that they had to break altars to hide it. The ancient voice inside her stirred at the word old. Return. Velxira clenched her jaw until it ached. She forced herself not to respond. They slept in shifts. Velxira did not truly sleep. She drifted, waking at every crack of branch, every whisper of mist. Each time she closed her eyes, she saw the collector disc, the shell reaching, the way her body had leaned toward it against her will. Near dawn, Sorint touched her shoulder lightly. He did not startle her, as if he had timed the touch to her breathing. We move, he said. Velxira rose, stiff and sore. Kaervald stood too, his gaze sweeping the woods, jaw set. They walked through a narrow ravine where stones rose like teeth. The air there tasted metallic. Velxira's scent dimmed further, as if the ravine swallowed it. By midday, they reached a boundary that Velxira felt more than saw. The forest thinned and the ground became pale, almost chalky. Wind moved oddly here, circling back on itself. Birds flew wide around it. Sorint stopped at a line of standing stones half buried in earth. Old runes marked them, not council runes. Older, rougher, like claw marks, he breathed out. Deaf edge, Velxira frowned. Why deaf? Because council runes struggle to hear across it, Sorint said. Spells go dull, tracking goes blind. Kaervald's gaze moved over the stones. Not fully, Sorint nodded. Not fully, but enough to buy time. They passed between the standing stones. Velxira felt a pressure lift from her skin, like stepping out of a room full of staring eyes. Her scent did not vanish, but it became hers again, not a beacon screaming into the world. She almost cried from the relief. Ahead, a small village emerged from the trees. Low houses built from wood and stone, smoke rising from chimneys. People moved quietly, watching strangers with careful eyes, and every face was masked. Not carnival masks. Practical ones. Cloth and leather, some decorated, some plain. A culture built around not being smelled. Velxira's chest tightened. Omegas lived here. She felt it in the air, the subtle sweetness of bodies not ashamed of themselves but cautious of the world. A group approached. They carried no weapons openly, but their posture was ready. A woman with a dark mask spoke first. State your intent. Sorint lifted his hands slightly. Shelter, council pursuit. The woman's gaze shifted to Velxira, and Velxira felt the moment her scent brushed the village air. Heads turned, a hush fell. Kaervald stepped half a pace closer to Velxira, not touching, just present. We are not here to take, he said. We are here to survive. The woman's eyes narrowed behind the mask. That alpha's name, Kaervald's jaw tightened. Kaervald Asterion. A ripple moved through the villagers. Fear, anger, recognition. Then an older voice cut through. Bring them. An elder emerged slowly, leaning on a carved staff. His mask was pale wood, etched with swirling lines. His posture was weary but unbowed. He stopped in front of Velxira and tilted his head as if listening without ears. Then he spoke her name with certainty that made Velxira's stomach drop. "Velxira," her throat tightened. "I do not know you." The elder's voice was rough, like wind over stone. "You were promised, and you were betrayed." Kaervald went still. Sorint's gaze sharpened. Velxira's pulse hammered. "Promised to who?" The elder looked toward the standing stones, then back. "To the old pact, to the center, to the only kind of bond that does not rot." Velxira's hands shook. "You are speaking in riddles." The elder gestured with his staff. "Come, you will see the record." They followed him through the village. Omegas watched from doorways, their eyes bright behind masks. Some looked hopeful. Some looked terrified, as if Velxira's presence was both salvation and disaster. They entered a longhouse that smelled of herbs and smoke. Along the back wall stood a shelf of stone tablets and bound hides. The elder moved with reverence, selecting a hide wrapped in cloth. He unrolled it on a table. Symbols and drawings covered it. A story in ink and rune. Sorint leaned in, eyes scanning. "This is old," the elder nodded. "Older than the council. This is how we kept truth when they burned books." Velxira stared at one drawing, a figure in the center of a circle of wolves. Not chained. Not crowned. Simply present, and the wolves around it were calm, eyes soft. The elder tapped the image. "This is what the arena shouted, Primbeast." Velxira flinched. "What am I?" The elder's voice was steady. "Not a race, not a bloodline you can breed like livestock. It is a state. When an Omega becomes the center of the pack by magic, not by fear. When scent becomes law, not the law of ownership, the law of consent." Velxira's mouth went dry. Consent. Kaervald's eyes darkened, jaw clenched, as if the word hurt him and healed him at once. The elder continued. "The council feared it because it breaks their hierarchy. A forced mark cannot survive near a true center. It cracks. It turns to ash, so they hunted centers, they sealed them, they turned them into locks, into tools." Velxira's stomach turned. "So the seal on my collarbone," the elder nodded. "Not protection, restraint." The words hit her like a slap. Memories of rehearsed kindness and scripted love clicked into place with nauseating clarity. Velxira's voice shook. "They raised me like a quiet pet." Sorint's tone was quiet, sharp. "They raised you like a disguised weapon." Kaervald stared at the hide as if it were a wound. If she is a center, then the voice inside her. The elder's gaze lifted to Velxira. "The gate." Velxira's skin went cold. "The gate to what?" The elder hesitated, then spoke with care. "To the old pack spirit. Thing the council tried to bind to their politics. The thing they call the beast sky. If it wakes wrong, it does not protect, it devours." Velxira swallowed hard, the ancient voice inside her stirring at the elder's words like a dog lifting its head at a familiar whistle. "Return." Velxira squeezed her eyes shut. "I do not want it." The elder's voice softened. "Want does not matter, only choice does." Velxira's eyes snapped open. "That is a contradiction." The elder shook his head. "It is a burden." "Not a contradiction. You did not choose to be born with this, but you can choose what you do with it." Kaervald's voice came out low. "Tell her about the fire." Velxira turned toward him, heart jumping. "What fire?" Kaervald's gaze was fixed on the table, not on her. "The night your seal was cut into you, a fortress burned." Velxira's breath caught. "I do not remember." "You would not," the elder said. "They gave you a new childhood, a stitched one." Velxira's stomach clenched. "Kaervald, how do you know?" He finally looked at her, and his eyes held an old exhaustion, like someone who has carried a scene in his head for years. "I was there," he said. The room went still. Velxira's throat tightened. "You were there when they sealed me." Kaervald's jaw flexed. "I was young, I was not council, I was not priest, I was a blade in a war I did not understand." Her chest burned. Convenient. Kaervald did not flinch from the accusation. "I saw smoke, I saw people running. I saw a man with a rune knife. and I saw someone carry a child through flame. Velxira's hands shook. And you want me to believe that child was me? Kaervald's voice broke slightly on the next words, as if he hated himself for saying them. I saw the child's collarbone. I saw the rune being carved. I heard her cry stop when the seal closed. Velxira's vision blurred, fury and horror tangled. Then you watched. Kaervald's face tightened. I tried to get to you. I was held back. I killed the man who held me back, and still I was too slow. Silence pressed on the room. Sorint moved suddenly, stepping toward a corner shelf. He pulled out a small bundle wrapped in waxed cloth. I did not want to use this as leverage, Sorint said, voice flat. But she deserves proof. Velxira stared at him. Proof of what? Sorint unwrapped the cloth and revealed a scrap of fabric, charred at the edges. A faint rune mark stained it, a shape like a closed eye with a hairline crack through it. Velxira's breath caught. It matched the broken seal on her skin in a way that made her bones ache with recognition. Sorint held it out. I took it from the fortress ruins years ago. I did not understand what it was. I kept it because it did not burn like ordinary ink. Velxira's fingers trembled as she touched the fabric. A pulse ran up her arm, the ancient voice inside her sighed, satisfied. Return. She jerked her hand back. Kaervald watched her reaction, face tight. This is why Malkvorin wants you. Not to mate you, to use you as a lock and then a key. Velxira's stomach turned. And you, why are you here? Kaervald's voice was quiet. Because I have spent years trying to find the child they stole from the fire, because I believed she died. And because when I smelled you in the arena, my blood recognized you before my mind could. Velxira's throat tightened. Recognized me how? Kaervald's eyes darkened. Like a wound that never closed. Her breath shook. The words were intimate and horrifying. A connection born in trauma, not romance. She hated that her body still reacted to him, that warmth still flickered when he looked at her like that. The elder cleared his throat. The council will not let you rest. Not now. They have declared you a threat to order. Sorint's gaze sharpened. News travels fast. The elder nodded toward the door. It arrived before you did. A younger villager stepped into the longhouse, mask dark with soot stains. His voice shook. A messenger bird, council decree. Kaervald Asterion is named enemy of order. His pack is sentenced to cleansing. Kaervald's face went still. Velxira felt a sharp pain in her chest, surprising in its intensity. His pack, living bodies, not rumors. Kaervald spoke, voice clipped. They will burn my den. Sorint's jaw tightened. They will also use it as bait. They know he will want to return. Kaervald looked at Velxira, and she saw the war inside him, the instinct to protect his own. The need to keep her away from council hands, the fear of what she could become if pushed. I have to go back, he said. Velxira's nails dug into her palm. No, Kaervald blinked. No, I am not a lure, Velxira said, voice shaking. I am not a prize you drag behind you to pull their teeth into your throat. If you return, they will follow you to me. Kaervald's jaw clenched. If I do not return, my people die. Velxira swallowed hard. And if you do, mine will too. Mine meaning me. And this village. And anyone who breathes near my scent. The elder's staff tapped the floor once. Enough, there is a third way. Sorint's eyes narrowed. Which is? The elder looked at Velxira. Control. Velxira's stomach dropped. I do not have control. You have suppression and explosion, the elder corrected. Control is different. Control is agreement with yourself. Velxira's throat tightened. Agreement. The elder nodded. You have been trained to fear your own body, trained to call instinct shame. That makes you easy to push. We will not push you, we will teach you to choose. Velxira's eyes burned. The offer felt like water to someone who has been drinking salt. Kaervald's voice was low. Teach her fast. The elder's gaze flicked to Kaervald. She is not your soldier. Kaervald did not argue. He lowered his eyes slightly, a subtle acknowledgement. No, she is not. Training began that afternoon. Not combat training, not seduction, not obedience drills disguised as safety. Breath. Elder taught Velxira to breathe in a rhythm that made her scent settle like a lake instead of splashing like a storm. He taught her to notice the moment her body wanted to obey someone else's will, and to pause there, to name it, to choose. Sometimes the choice was no. Sometimes the choice was yes, spoken carefully, with full awareness. Sometimes the choice was not now. Kaervald stayed nearby, but did not hover. He watched with a tension that never fully left his shoulders, like a wolf guarding a boundary line. When Velxira stumbled, he did not rush in unless she reached for him with her eyes. Sorint watched differently. He listened as if Velxira's breaths were equations. When he spoke, it was to point out patterns. "The voice inside you grows louder when you are cornered," he said. "It quiets when you ground yourself." Velxira nodded, sweating, hands trembling. "It wants me to return. It wants me to open something." Sorint's eyes narrowed. "Then we must keep you from panic." Panic is the lever they will use. On the third day, an exiled Omega approached the elder, trembling. She wore a mask like the others, but her hands shook as if the mask could not hide what she carried. Velxira smelled it even through the village's careful herbs and smoke. A mark, not a natural bond, not a chosen one. A forced brand, stale and metallic, clinging to her skin like old blood. The Omega's voice broke. "He marked me before I escaped. I cannot sleep." My body still turns toward him like a curse. The elder looked at Velxira. "You asked what you are. Here is one answer. Can you help her?" Velxira's throat tightened. "I do not know how." The elder's voice was gentle. "You already did in the temple. An altar answered you. In the bog, a pack stopped. Try again, not with power, with consent." Velxira stepped toward the Omega slowly. "Do you want me to touch you?" The Omega's eyes filled with tears behind the mask. "Yes, please, if it is safe." Velxira nodded. "If you feel pain, you tell me to stop." The Omega's shoulders shook. "I will." Velxira lifted her hand. Her claws stayed sheathed. She did not want to frighten her. She touched the Omega's wrist. The forced mark scent hit her like a bad taste. Her stomach turned. Rage rose, hot and bright. The ancient voice inside her stirred, eager. "Return." Velxira swallowed it down and focused on the elder's teachings. Breath, choice, agreement. She whispered, barely audible. This mark was not consent. The air around her palm warmed. The Omega gasped. Velxira felt the mark as a pattern under skin, a rune line anchored by fear. She did not rip it. She did not break it. She rewrote the rule it rested on. Her voice stayed steady. "A mark is a promise, not a chain." Heat pulsed once. The Omega cried out, then sobbed, not in pain, but in a sudden flood of relief. The stale metallic scent cracked like ice splitting, and then it was gone. The air changed. It was subtle at first, then impossible to ignore. Across the longhouse, other Omegas lifted their heads as if they had just heard their own names called softly. Some began to cry without understanding why. One fell to her knees, hands pressed to her chest, whispering, "I feel like myself." Velxira swayed, shock and fear crashing together. "What did I do?" The elder's eyes were wet. "You gave her back to herself." Kaervald stared at Velxira as if he had just watched a miracle and a disaster in the same breath. "Velxira," she looked at him, trembling, "I did not mean to make everyone feel it." Sorint's face was tight. "That is the problem. Word will spread even without words. This village will become a beacon." Velxira's stomach dropped. "We have to hide." The elder shook his head. "We have hidden for too long. That is why the council grew teeth." Fear surged. Velxira hated that he was right. That night, as smoke drifted from chimneys and masks hid trembling mouths, Velxira stood outside alone, trying to breathe her scent down into something small. Kaervald approached quietly. He stopped several steps away. "I will not touch you," he said softly. "I only want to be near. Is that allowed?" Velxira's throat tightened. "Yes." Kaervald exhaled, relief flickering across his face before he crushed it down. He stayed where he was, not coming closer. Velxira stared at the red moon, then spoke without looking at him. "When I removed that mark, it felt right. Kaervald's voice was rough. Because it was. Velxira swallowed. Then why does it feel like a trap too? Because anything that frees others makes enemies, Kaervald said. And because the council will tell the world you are dangerous, they will call you a monster so they can justify chains. Velxira's chest ached. Am I dangerous? Kaervald was silent for a long moment. Then he answered honestly. Yes, Velxira flinched. Kaervald continued, voice low and steady. But danger is not evil. A knife can cut bread. It can cut rope. It can cut a throat. The hand matters. The choice matters. Velxira's eyes burned. And if my choice becomes a voice in my skull that says return, Kaervald's jaw tightened. Then we fight for your choice harder. We build anchors. We do not let the council corner you into obedience. A soft laugh drifted out of the dark behind them. Velxira spun, heart hammering. A figure stood at the edge of the village light, face unmasked, silk cloak catching the moon glow. Iriavan Targress. Her smile was delicate and lethal. How touching. The feared alpha preaches consent like a priest. Kaervald's posture shifted instantly, protective without stepping in front of Velxira. Leave. Iriavan's eyes glinted. You are in no position to command, not anymore. The council wants your head on a pike. Your pack is already bleeding. Velxira's throat tightened. How did you find us? Iriavan lifted one elegant hand. Do you think a village of masked Omegas can hide the scent that cracked the world? Velxira's stomach dropped. Of course, the mark removal, the wave. Iriavan stepped closer, slow, savoring the tension. I came with an offer, Velxira. Velxira kept her voice steady with effort. What offer? Protection, Iriavan purred. A name. A roof the council will not dare burn. Stand beside me and I will stop Malkvorin. I will stop the shells. Kaervald's voice turned icy. You are lying. Iriavan's smile widened. Am I, or are you simply jealous that someone else can give her safety? Velxira's pulse thudded. Safety. The word hit the bruised parts of her. She hated that it tempted her. Iriavan's gaze slid over Velxira's throat, lingering like a touch. You could be adored instead of hunted. Velxira swallowed. Adored by you? Iriavan's eyes shone. By the world, if you let me introduce you correctly. Kaervald took a controlled breath. Do not make her a banner. Iriavan laughed softly. She already is. Velxira's throat tightened. Why do you care? You were at the arena. You smiled while they chased me. Iriavan's gaze did not soften. I smiled because honesty is cleaner than pretending. The world is a mouth. It eats. Better to decide how you will be swallowed. Velxira felt sick. That is not protection. That is surrender. Iriavan stepped even closer, stopping just outside Velxira's personal space. No. It is choosing the predator you can bargain with. Velxira's hands trembled. And what do you want in exchange? Iriavan's smile turned intimate. Loyalty, public alignment, a promise, nothing crude. Kaervald's voice was a warning. She does not owe you a promise. Iriavan glanced at Kaervald and her smile sharpened. And she owes you nothing either. Velxira's chest tightened. That part was true, and it hurt because it was true. Iriavan's gaze returned to Velxira. Come, let me show you something. Velxira hesitated. Kaervald's voice was low. Do not follow her alone. Sorint appeared from the shadows like he had been there the whole time, eyes calm. I agree. Iriavan's lips curved. Fine, bring your shadows. She led them toward a small clearing behind the longhouse where the elder kept old stones stacked like a memory wall. Iriavan stopped and held out her wrist. A bracelet gleamed there, rune metal catching moonlight. Velxira's stomach dropped instantly. The rune etched into it was the same shape as the seal that had been on Velxira's collarbone. The closed eye, the hush. Velxira's breath hitched. You. Iriavan's smile did not fade. Yes, I was near. Kaervald's body went still, like a wolf about to lunge. You sealed her. Iriavan lifted her chin. I did not hold the knife. I wore the key. Velxira's vision blurred with rage. Then you helped. I helped keep you alive, Iriavan said, voice silky and cruel. Or do you think you would have survived one day with that scent uncut? Velxira's chest burned. Alive like a pet, alive like a lock. Iriaven's eyes glittered. Alive. Sorint's voice was quiet, dangerous. Who held the knife? Iriaven's smile widened. Would you like the name, or would you like the truth? They are not always the same. Velxira's hands shook. Tell me. Iriaven stepped close again, and this time she did something that made Velxira's skin crawl. She did not touch Velxira's throat. She kissed the air beside it. A gesture so intimate it felt like a violation without contact. A deliberate provocation. Velxira's scent flared in response, her body reacting with shameful heat, not because she wanted Iriaven, but because her instincts responded to attention like a wound responds to pressure. Kaervald's breath turned rough. He did not move, but his eyes looked like storm clouds. Iriaven's lips hovered near Velxira's ear as she whispered, "Open yourself, or they will open you by force." Velxira jerked back, shaking. "Do not." Iriaven smiled, satisfied. "See, you are already a gate, they can hear you." Velxira's throat tightened as the ancient voice inside her surged in answer, thrilled by the word gate. "Return." Sorint grabbed Velxira's elbow gently, grounding her. "Breathe, slow." Velxira forced air in and out, fighting the flare. Kaervald's voice was a growl held behind teeth. "Get out of this village." Iriaven straightened, unbothered. "I will. But my offer stands. Stand with me and I will shield you from Malkvorin. Stand alone and you will be dragged into his temple like a trophy." Velxira's voice was raw. "You cannot shield me, you are part of them." Iriaven's smile thinned. "I am part of myself." She turned to leave, then paused and looked back, eyes glinting. "Look at the horizon at dawn." And then she was gone into the trees like a silk shadow. Velxira stood trembling, cloak clutched tight. Kaervald stepped a fraction closer, still not touching. "Velxira," she looked at him, eyes burning. "Do you think she is telling the truth?" Kaervald's jaw clenched. "Yes, and she is still lying." Sorint's voice was quiet. "The bracelet means she had access to the sealing craft. It does not mean she was the butcher. She is offering protection because she wants control." Velxira swallowed hard. "Everyone wants control." Kaervald's eyes held hers. "Not everyone." The honesty in his gaze made her throat tight. Sorint turned his head, listening. "What?" Velxira asked. Sorint's face went still. "We have guests." The elder's longhouse door opened and the elder himself stepped out, staff in hand, mask pale in the night. He looked past them toward the edge stones. His voice was rough. "Dawn is coming." Velxira's stomach sank. What did Iriaven mean? The elder lifted his staff and pointed past the standing stones, toward the distant hills. Velxira followed his gesture. At first she saw nothing but darkness. Slowly, points of orange light appeared on the horizon. Not one, many, like a line of torches moving in a disciplined wave. As the sky began to pale, the lights multiplied, stretching across the ridge like a burning crown. Kaervald's face went hard. "An army." Sorint's voice was flat. "Shells, many." Velxira's breath caught. She could almost hear them, even from here. The rhythm of metal feet. The pulse of runes. The elder's staff tapped the ground once, a funeral sound. "The council comes to death edge." Velxira's skin prickled as the ancient voice inside her rose to meet the approaching threat, eager and bright. "Return. Open." Velxira clenched her fists, claws threatening to slide out. Kaervald turned toward her, and for the first time his restraint looked like desperation. "Do not let them corner you." Velxira stared at the horizon of fire and understood, with a cold clarity that stole her breath. They were not coming for Kaervald. They were not coming for the village. They were coming for the gate inside her. "They are closer than they look," Sorint said, voice flat with certainty. The ridge of lights on the horizon did not flicker like torches carried by nervous hands. It moved like a single organism, steady and disciplined, as if the dawn itself had decided to march. Velxira stood at the edge of death edge and tasted iron on the wind. The standing stones behind her hummed faintly, their old runes restless, and the village air smelled of smoke and herbs and fear pressed into masks. The ancient voice inside her rose like a tide at the sight of the approaching line. Return. Open. She clenched her jaw until it hurt. No. Kaervald was beside her, not touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth in the cold morning. His gaze never left the horizon. His shoulders were rigid, as if he were holding back the instinct to become a beast and run straight into the fire. Kaervald Meridian tapped his staff once, and the sound carried through the village like a bell. Doors opened. Figures moved, masked faces turning toward the standing stones. We evacuate the young and the weak first, Kaervald said. Then we decide what kind of dead we are willing to be. A masked Omega stepped forward, hands shaking. We are not warriors. Kaervald's voice did not soften, but it steadied. Then do not be warriors, be witnesses, be breath, be the truth they buried. More villagers gathered, pulling children close, pressing herbs into pockets, wrapping scarves around throats. Velxira's chest tightened. This was happening because of her. She had brought a beacon into a place built to be quiet. I will go, she said suddenly. The words came out too loud, too desperate. If I leave, they will follow. They will not burn you for me. Kaervald's masked face turned toward her. They will burn us anyway. You are not the cause, you are the excuse. Sorint's eyes flicked to the standing stones, measuring. The council will not accept surrender. They need you as a mechanism. Kaervald's voice was low. And they need an example. Velxira's stomach clenched. Then we should run deeper. Into the bog again. Sorint shook his head once. Shells do not tire. They do not fear swamp. They will walk until they reach you. The ancient voice inside her curled around Sorint's words as if pleased. Return. Open. Velxira pressed her palm to her collarbone under the cloak, feeling the broken seal rune throb like a bruise that refused to heal. I can feel them, their runes, like hooks. Kaervald's staff tapped again, sharper. Enough. We move the children now. Masked villagers began to stream toward the back path that led into the woods. The village did not panic. It moved with the grim practice of people who had rehearsed disaster for years. A young Omega clutched a baby to her chest and paused in front of Velxira. Her eyes were bright behind her mask. You freed my sister, she whispered. The mark that owned her, it is gone. Velxira swallowed hard. I did not mean to pull the council here. The Omega's voice shook. Then pull them somewhere else, not with running, with law. Velxira stared as she hurried away. With law. Kaervald's gaze finally shifted to Velxira. His eyes were dark and steady, and she hated that her body still recognized him as safety even now in the face of an army. You heard her, he said. Velxira's throat tightened. I do not know if I can do it again. The mark removal. It felt like my hands were not just hands. Sorint's voice cut in, calm and merciless. Your hands are runes when you choose them to be. The difference is choice. That is what makes it yours and not theirs. The ancient voice inside her hissed as if offended by the word choice. Return. Open. Velxira forced a slow breath, remembering Kaervald's lessons. She did not fight the voice like an enemy. She named it, not mine. She imagined it as a wind that could blow through her without moving her feet. Kaervald's hand lifted slightly, hovering in the air between them. He did not touch her. He waited, a silent question. Velxira's chest tightened. She nodded once. His fingers closed around her hand, warm, firm, not possessive. The contact grounded her so sharply she almost gasped. I am here, he said. Velxira's voice came out raw. Do not die for me, Kaervald's jaw flexed. I will not waste my death. That is what I can promise. Sorint's mouth tightened as he watched the horizon. They are deploying anchors. I can feel it in the air. The dome is coming. Kaervald turned and began walking toward the standing stones with a slow, deliberate pace. Villagers formed a line behind him. Not a militia, not a pack, but a wall of bodies saying no without teeth. Velxira's stomach turned. We cannot let them stand there. Kaervald's voice drifted back without him turning. "We are not standing for you, we are standing for ourselves." The lights crested the ridge. The council army poured into view. They were not men. They were shells, hundreds of them, armor black and rune-edged, moving in synchronized ranks. Between them walked living figures in pale robes, carrying staffs and lanterns that glowed with cold, runic fire. And at the center, calm as a blade laid on velvet, walked Malkforin Solves. He did not wear a mask. He did not need one. His face was serene, almost kind, as if he had come to offer blessings. He stopped at the boundary of Deaf Edge and lifted his hands. The air tightened. A faint shimmer rose over the ridge like an invisible bowl turning upside down. Sorint's voice was clipped. "The dome of obedience." The shimmer thickened, becoming a translucent veil across the sky. The standing stones vibrated in protest. The moment the dome settled, villagers staggered. Some dropped to their knees. Velxira watched in horror as a masked alpha, strong and broad, trembled like a frightened child, head lowering without consent. An Omega pressed a hand to her throat and choked on her own breath, eyes wide with shame, body bowing to a command she had not agreed to hear. Kaervald's staff shook. Sorint's knees bent involuntarily, then he caught himself with a snarl of will and stayed standing, shaking. Kaervald's breath turned rough, his jaw clenched so hard it looked like it might crack. He did not kneel, but Velxira felt the dome trying to pry him open like a lock. And yet, the pressure slid around Velxira like water around stone. She stood upright, heart hammering. Malkforin's gaze found her instantly, like he had been waiting for this exact proof. His voice carried across the boundary, smooth and pleased. "There she is, the one the dome cannot teach." Velxira stepped forward before she could think better of it. The ground beneath her boots felt suddenly solid, as if the standing stones were lending her their spine. "I am not your thing," she said, voice loud enough to carry. "I am not your lock, I am not your key." Malkforin smiled gently. "You are tired, Velxira. You are frightened. You think refusal is freedom." The dome pulsed once. Behind Velxira, a masked Omega sobbed as her body tried to crawl forward on her knees, dragged by the dome's command. Velxira's stomach turned. "You do not understand," Malkforin continued. "You are not a person in this equation. You are a mechanism that the world lost. We are restoring order." Velxira's fingers curled. Her claws threatened to slide out. Sorint's voice came tight through clenched teeth. "He is feeding the dome with speech. Do not let him define you." Velxira forced her breathing to slow. Choice, agreement with herself. "I am a person," she said, "and I choose." Malkforin tilted his head as if amused by a child's stubbornness. "Then choose to look." Two robed attendants dragged someone forward from between the shell ranks. A living prisoner, an Omega, thin, bruised, eyes hollow. His shirt had been torn open. On his chest, carved into raw skin, was a symbol that made Velxira's breath stop, a rune like a hook inside a circle. Key. The smell hit her next. Not just blood and fear, but something familiar, something her body recognized before her mind could. A voice from her stitched childhood rose behind her eyes, singing softly, comforting. Her vision blurred. The prisoner lifted his head. His gaze locked onto Velxira and his expression broke into something like grief. "You," he whispered, voice hoarse. "They told me you died." Velxira swayed. Kaervald's staff slipped in his hand. Someone behind him gasped. Sorint's eyes went sharp. "The memory donor." Velxira's throat tightened. "I know you." The prisoner's lips trembled. "You were small. You held my finger and you would not let go. They said it would be merciful to make you forget." Velxira's stomach lurched. The kindness she remembered, the rehearsed warmth, the scripted safety. It had been built from real faces. The prisoner's face. Malkforin's voice was almost tender. "Your false memories were not invented, Velxira. They were curated. You needed something believable, something soft enough to keep you compliant." A scream rose in Velxira's chest. It did not come out as sound. It came out as scent, flaring hot and wild. The dome shivered as if her aroma had slapped it. Sorint's voice snapped. Do not flare, focus. Velxira's hands shook. She stared at the prisoner's carved chest, rage and pity tangling until she could barely breathe. Malkvorin smiled. This Omega is the key. You are the lock. Together you open the beast sky gate. The old pact, the old power, we will use it to end disorder forever. Kaervald's voice came out like a growl. You cut a key into a living body. Malkvorin did not deny it. A tool requires shape. Velxira's throat tightened. She took one step forward, then another, until she stood at the boundary stones, facing the dome like a wall of glass. The dome pressed against her skin, trying to tell her to kneel, to submit, to become quiet again. It could not make her. But it could make everyone behind her. A masked child whimpered and dropped to the ground, hands over his ears as if the dome's command was a sound too loud to bear. Velxira felt something inside her twist. The ancient voice surged, eager, return, open. She forced her focus to the lesson Kaervald had drilled into her until it became bone. Control is agreement with yourself, not suppression, not explosion, agreement. Velxira inhaled slowly. The world's scents rose into her like threads. Fear. Incense, rune dust, old stone. The stale metallic stink of forced marks on bodies behind her. Kaervald's snow and smoke. Sorint's cool concentration. She exhaled, and she let her scent become language, not a scream, not a lure, a sentence. The air around her shimmered. The standing stones hummed in answer. Her collarbone rune burned like a star. She spoke, voice steady, and the words felt like they were carving themselves into the space between her lungs and the dome. Obedience without consent is not law, it is violence. The dome pulsed. Velxira's scent pressed into it like ink into parchment. She could feel the dome's runes, a net of commands, old and cruel, built to bypass choice and touch the body directly. She did not rip the net. She rewrote the rule it rested on. Her breath came out as a soft note, the same kind of centered sound she had made in the bog, but now it was shaped with intent. The dome cracked. A sound like thin ice breaking rolled across the ridge. Masked villagers gasped as the pressure on their throats eased. Knees straightened, hands unclenched. The shame of forced submission loosened its grip. The dome shattered into a glittering rain of rune dust that vanished before it hit the ground. For a heartbeat, the shell army froze. Their perfect rhythm stopped. They stood like puppets whose strings had been cut. Then Malkvorin laughed. It was not surprised laughter. It was delighted. Thank you, he called, voice bright. Now the gate hears you clearly. The ground under the ridge trembled. A deep vibration rolled beneath the standing stones, like something massive turning in its sleep. Velxira's stomach dropped. She felt the ancient voice inside her swell with triumph. Return. Open. Cracks spidered across the chalky earth between the shell ranks and deaf edge. A circle of runes ignited in the ground, vast and ancient, lines flaring pale blue, then white. The air tasted like lightning. Villagers screamed. Children cried. Some alphas shifted halfway in panic, claws and fur bursting out and then stuttering back as if their bodies did not know what rules applied anymore. Sorint's voice was tight. The gate. Kaervald's staff struck the ground hard. Do not run. Running feeds panic. Panic feeds the beast sky. The runic circle split open like a mouth. Cold wind rushed up from it, carrying scents that did not belong to any living forest. Ash, old fur, moonlight, blood that had dried centuries ago. From the opening rose a shape, not fully physical, like a spirit trying to remember how to have bones. It was a wolf and a sky and a storm braided together, eyes like empty moons, mouth full of whispers. It did not roar. It spoke into the mind, into the marrow. Center. The word hit Velxira so hard her knees nearly buckled. She felt every head in the village turn toward her. Not because they wanted to offer her up, but because the gate's demand had made her the loudest thing in the world. Kaervald moved instantly, stepping close, then stopping as if he caught himself from grabbing her. His voice came out rough. "Velxira, look at me." She forced her gaze to his. His eyes were dark, steady, terrified for her. "I will not claim you," he said, voice strained with urgency. "I will not mark you, I will not take your throat, but I want you to know this before anything else happens." Velxira's breath shook. "Know what?" His jaw flexed as if the confession hurt. "That I want you. Not as a mechanism, not as a trophy, as you, and if the world ends in a minute, I want you to leave it knowing I would have chosen you even if you could give me nothing." Velxira's eyes burned. The gate spirit turned, its storm eyes fixing on Kaervald, then on Velxira, as if tasting the shape of their words. "Center," it repeated, hungrier. Velxira's throat tightened. "It wants me to step into it." Sorint stepped closer to her other side, careful, respectful, not touching without permission. His voice was calm in a way that made her want to cling to it. "It is testing," he said. "It is searching for an anchor. Malkvorin thinks he can force the anchor. But ancient things do not respond to force the way he expects. They respond to meaning." Velxira swallowed. "Meaning is not enough." Sorint's gaze held hers. "Meaning is the only thing that lasts." The ground shook again. The shell army began to move, but not with their old rhythm. They lurched, as if the gate's opening had disrupted their command grid. Some turned toward the village, hands lifting, rune palms glowing cold. Kaervald shouted, "Evacuate now. All who can run, run." Masked villagers grabbed children and fled into the woods. Others stayed, trembling but upright, forming a line around the standing stones with nothing but staffs, knives, and stubborn breath. Malkvorin raised his hands toward the gate and began to chant. The air tightened around the prisoner Omega, the key, and the rune carved into his chest flared, burning. He screamed, body arching, dragged by invisible hooks toward the gate mouth. Velxira's stomach turned. "Stop!" Malkvorin's voice rang over the chaos. "You broke the dome. Now watch what obedience is for. It keeps the world from tearing itself apart." The gate spirit's wind screamed. The key's body began to lift, pulled by the gate like a tide pulling a drowning man. Velxira took a step forward without thinking. Kaervald's hand shot out, then stopped short of her wrist. "Do not go in," Velxira's voice broke. "He will die." Kaervald's throat bobbed. "If you go in, you might never come back." Velxira stared at the prisoner's face, the familiar grief in his eyes, the real person used as a piece in her fake life. She hated the council. She hated Malkvorin. She hated the gate. She hated the ancient voice inside her that sounded satisfied. Return. Open. She forced herself to breathe and looked up. Past Malkvorin, past the shells, a new figure walked into view. Not armored, not robed. A man in a dark coat with a pale sash, flanked by council attendants who moved with reverence. His face was familiar from Kaervald's hidden records, from whispered stories of politics and mercy. Lord Benefactor Idrin Voss, the council's public saint, the one who spoke of protecting Omegas, the one who funded shelters and preached order with a gentle smile. He stopped at the edge of the runic circle and looked at the village like it was a ledger. Then he spoke, voice carrying without strain. "There is no need for theatrics, Malkvorin. The resource is secured." Velxira's breath caught. Resource. Malkvorin bowed his head slightly, the gesture faintly mocking. "My lord," the world tilted. The real power was not the priest. It was the smiling benefactor. Idrin Voss's gaze landed on Velxira, and his expression did not change, as if he were looking at a tool he had misplaced and now found again. "Omegas are a stabilizing resource," he said calmly. "Pacts are instruments of governance. Chaos begins when Omegas believe they are individuals first." Kaervald made a sound like a choke. Velxira's stomach turned. "You pretend to protect us." Idrin's smile was almost pitying. "I protect the world from what you are. That is protection. You are a gate that makes consent contagious. Do you understand what that does to hierarchy, to labor, to control?" The word control tasted like blood in Velxira's mouth. Kaervald's voice went low, lethal. You are the one who ordered the sealing. Idrin's eyes flicked to Kaervald as if noticing a stain on a sleeve. That night was regrettable. The fortress did not need to burn, but the child needed to disappear. Velxira's vision blurred. The child, me. Idrin continued, serene. We gave you a quiet life. We gave you a script to keep you safe, and now you have torn it open in front of a village that was already infected with defiance. Sorint's voice was cold. You call autonomy infection. Idrin's gaze shifted to Sorint, faint curiosity. You are clever. You will be useful in the new order too, if you submit early. Sorint did not answer. Iriavan Targress appeared then, stepping from the shadows near the council attendants, silk cloak moving like smoke. Her smile was intact, but her eyes were sharper now, wary. She looked at Idrin Voss with something like disgust. So this is your true sermon, Iriavan murmured. I always wondered what the saints said when the doors were closed. Idrin did not glance at her. Princess Iriavan, you were helpful. You will be compensated. Iriavan's laugh was small and bitter. Compensated, like a servant. Idrin's gaze finally turned toward her, and the gentleness vanished for a flicker, revealing the predator underneath. Like a tool that did its function. Iriavan's smile tightened. Velxira felt something shift in Iriavan's scent, not remorse, not kindness, pure self-preservation, sharp as a blade. Iriavan stepped forward and spoke loudly enough for Velxira to hear over the wind and screams. If you want to stop the gate, do not fight the priest, she said. Fight the slab. Sorint's eyes narrowed. What slab? Iriavan pointed toward a heavy stone plate half buried beside the runic circle, carved with intricate runes, pulsing faintly. It looked like an altar piece ripped from an older temple and dragged here like a trophy. The primary control rune is hidden inside that altar plate, Iriavan said quickly. They anchored the gate with it. Break it wrong and the gate tears wider. Rewrite it and the gate loses its leash. Idrin Voss's expression remained calm. Princess, you disappoint me. Iriavan's chin lifted. You disappoint everyone. I simply stopped pretending. Idrin raised one hand, subtle. A shell turned toward Iriavan, rune palm glowing. Iriavan's eyes widened. Sorint moved first. He threw a small pouch of dark powder at the shell's face plate. It exploded into a cloud that dulled the rune light for half a second. Kaervald lunged, shifting halfway, claws flashing, and slammed the shell to the ground. It did not scream. It just tried to rise again. We do not have time, Sorint said, voice sharp. He looked at Velxira. The slab. If you can rewrite one rule in that plate, you can sever the leash without opening yourself. Velxira's throat tightened. If I get close, the gate will pull me. Sorint's gaze held hers. Then anchor yourself to a choice. Kaervald turned toward Velxira, face tight. You do not have to do this. Velxira swallowed hard. If I do not, they will carve keys into more bodies. They will build more domes. They will make my scent a weapon against everyone. The key screamed again as Malkvorin's chant tightened around him. Velxira's chest burned. I will not let them. Kaervald's breath shook. He stepped closer, then stopped, the old discipline of consent still present even now, even with the world splitting open. May I touch you? He asked, voice hoarse. Not to claim, to anchor. Velxira stared at him, at the raw restraint in his eyes, at the way he asked even when it cost him. Yes, she whispered. Kaervald's hand slid to the back of her neck, warm and steady. His thumb rested lightly under her hairline, not pressing, not guiding, simply present. The touch sent a shiver through her that was not just fear. It was intimacy edged with danger, a reminder that she was alive and not alone. Sorint stepped to her other side and placed his hand on her shoulder, gentle, brief. I am here too, he said, not as an owner, as a witness. Velxira's eyes burned. The triangle of their contact felt like a promise that did not require chains. The gate spirit screamed wordlessly, wind whipping, hungry for center. Return, open. Velxira inhaled. She felt the ancient voice surge, trying to take the breath and turn it into command. She did not fight it by force. She denied it authority. Not mine. She stepped forward, Kaervald's hand leaving her neck as she moved, his touch ending cleanly rather than following like a leash. Velxira walked toward the altar slab. Gate's pull hit her like a wave. Her knees shook. The air tasted like lightning and old fur. She kept walking. Each step felt like walking toward the center of a storm that wanted her name. Malkvorin saw her and smiled, chanting louder. Idrin Voss watched with calm satisfaction. She will open, he murmured. She cannot resist what she is. Velxira's fingers trembled as she reached the slab. The runes on it pulsed, a complex lattice of control rules, ownership clauses disguised as sacred geometry. It was not just a spell. It was an ideology carved into stone. Velxira lifted her hand. Her claws slid out. Rune lines glimmered along them, alive. The gate wind howled. Center, it demanded. Velxira looked at the carved lattice and realized the trap. They had built the gate's leash with the same principle as a forced mark. Obedience without consent. That was the anchor. She could rewrite that. She could make the gate reject coercion the way her body had rejected the dome. But the cost rose in her throat like bile. If she rewrote it wrong, her scent would become a permanent beacon. She would never be able to hide. She would be found again and again by anyone with enough rune craft to listen. Sorint's voice carried to her through the wind. Rewrite the definition. Do not shatter the stone. Kaervald's voice was rough, urgent. Velxira, you can stop. You can come back. Velxira's heart slammed. She thought of the key's carved chest, the way his eyes had recognized her. She thought of the masked Omegas who had cried when she freed one mark, as if their bodies had finally come home. She thought of herself in the cage, being called prey, being priced. She exhaled, and she spoke, not to Malkvorin, not to Idrin, not to the gate, to the rule itself. A mark is a contract, she said, voice steady. A contract requires consent. Her claw touched the slab. She carved a single rune over the lattice's central node, a simple symbol that meant agreement, not obedience. Not yes, not no. Mutual. The slab flared. Pain shot up Velxira's arm to her collarbone like a blade of light. She gritted her teeth and did not scream. A wave rolled outward from the slab, not as scent alone, but as law rewritten in air. Across the ridge, forced marks cracked. Velxira smelled it instantly, the stale metallic scent of ownership shattering into ash. Masked villagers gasped and collapsed, not from obedience, but from sudden relief. Alphas who had been branded as tools began to sob openly, hands shaking, as if their bodies had been holding their breath for years. The key's rune flared once, then split. He dropped to the ground, coughing, free of the pull that had been lifting him toward the gate. Malkvorin's chant faltered. For the first time, his calm cracked into anger. No. Idrin Voss's smile vanished. What did you do? Velxira's voice was raw. I told the world the truth. The gate's spirit shuddered. It turned toward Malkvorin and Idrin, storm eyes narrowing as if tasting their intent. Center, it demanded again, but now the words sounded different. Not hunger. A test. Malkvorin lunged toward the slab, hands outstretched, trying to carve a counter rune, trying to reassert ownership. Sorint moved like a knife. He slapped his palm onto the slab's edge, pressing a rune he had been drawing in the dust for days without Velxira noticing. A pattern so subtle it looked like a stain until it activated. A mirror rune, the air snapped. Malkvorin's own control chant rebounded, twisting back onto him like a collar. His eyes widened, his mouth opened. No sound came out. His hands froze mid-reach, fingers trembling as if invisible chains had wrapped his wrists. Sorint's voice was quiet, merciless. You like obedience, enjoy it. Malkvorin tried to move and could not. Idrin Voss stepped back for the first time, composure cracking into something like fear. Impossible. Velxira turned toward him, claws still glowing, breath shaking. You built your power on forced marks, she said. Now the marks refuse you. Idrin's jaw tightened. You will regret this. Without hierarchy, packs will tear each other apart. Kaervald's voice rang out fierce. They already did, under your order. The gate's spirit surged, wind whipping. The runic circle in the ground began to close like a mouth that had decided it did not like the taste. Idrin's eyes widened. He lifted his hands, trying to command the gate with authority, trying to force it open again. His magic hit the new rule Velxira had carved and died like a spark in water. His face twisted. You cannot, Velxira said, voice steady through shaking breath. You do not have consent. The gate spirit's storm eyes fixed on Velxira. Center, it whispered again, softer now, almost pleading. The ancient voice inside Velxira rose in triumph. Return. Open. Velxira's stomach turned. This was the final trap. Even with the slab rewritten, the gate still wanted a center. It wanted her to anchor it to become a living hinge forever. She could feel the temptation in her blood. The power, the certainty, the end of fear through dominance. She hated it. She turned away from the gate and looked at Kaervald. He was wounded now, blood dark on his side where a shell's blade had cut him during the chaos. He stood anyway, eyes locked on her, refusing to fall. Velxira's throat tightened. You are hurt. Kaervald's voice was rough. Do not choose because of me. I am not, she whispered. She looked at Sorint. His face was pale, jaw tight, the cost of his mirror rune evident in the tremor of his hands. He was holding himself upright through will. Velxira's eyes burned. You could have run. Sorint's voice was steady. I do not like cages. Velxira faced the gate. She did not approach it as prey. She did not approach it as a ruler. She approached it as a person. I will not anchor you with fear, she said, voice shaking but clear. I will not anchor you with hunger. I will not anchor you with obedience. The gate wind howled, frustrated. Velxira inhaled, slow. She let her scent rise, not as lure, not as command, but as meaning shaped into rule, the way Kaervald had taught her, the way her body had always known. She spoke the final clause as if signing her name into the world. A gate is a choice, she said. If it cannot be entered by consent, it cannot be entered at all. Her voice became a soft note, a song of center that did not demand kneeling. The gate spirit shuddered. For a heartbeat, Velxira felt it resist, like an animal trained to bite and now asked to release. Then it exhaled. The runic circle began to dim. The mouth of the earth closed, not slammed, but gently, like a door being shut by someone who finally understood why it had been opened. The wind died. Silence fell hard across the ridge. The shells stood still for a moment, their rune neck plates flickering. Then, one by one, they crumbled, not into gore, not into bodies, into ash and empty armor collapsing in heaps like costumes with nobody inside. The council attendants screamed and fled. Idrin Voss stared at the collapsing shells, his face empty of sermon now, revealing something small and terrified underneath. No, he whispered. No, this cannot be taken from us. Kaervald stepped forward, staff raised, masked villagers gathering behind him with shaking hands and steady eyes. It was never yours, Kaervald said. Idrin turned as if to run. Kaervald moved, fast despite his wound, and blocked Idrin's path without striking him. You will answer, Kaervald said, voice cold. Not to me, to the ones you called resource. Idrin's gaze darted toward Velxira, hatred sharpening. You think you saved them. You only taught them to refuse. Refusal breeds war. Velxira's voice came out low. Refusal breeds truth. War was already here. You just called it order. Idrin lunged toward her suddenly, desperate, hands outstretched, trying to grab her throat like a man who believed contact could restore control. Kaervald's arm snapped out and caught Idrin by the collar, slamming him to the ground. Kaervald did not tear him apart. He held him there, trembling with restrained violence. Velxira's chest tightened. She stepped closer, careful, and placed her hand lightly on Kaervald's forearm. He went still. He looked up at her, eyes wild, asking without words if he had crossed a line. Velxira shook her head slightly. Not no, not shame, just steady. Kaervald exhaled shakily and loosened his grip enough that Idrun could breathe, but not enough that he could run. Sorint approached Malkvorin, who was still locked in his own rebounded obedience, eyes wide, mouth open in silent rage. Sorint crouched and spoke softly, almost kindly. You wanted to study her. Consider this your result. Control collapses under consent. Malkvorin's eyes burned with hatred. Sorint stood and looked away as if Malkvorin was already irrelevant. Kaervald's village gathered the key, lifting him carefully, wrapping cloth over his carved chest. He trembled, but his eyes were clear now, alive. He looked at Velxira with wet lashes. You were real, he whispered, even when they rewrote you. Velxira's throat tightened. So were you? She wanted to say she was sorry. Sorry for forgetting. Sorry for surviving. Sorry for being a gate. The words tangled and would not come out. The key reached for her hand. Velxira let him touch her fingers briefly, a gentle contact, and she felt something inside her settle, like a stitched seam finally unthreading. Not mine, she told the ancient voice. Mine, she told herself. When the ridge finally quieted, the sun had risen fully, turning the ash of shells into a pale glitter on the ground. Kaervald stood at the standing stones and raised his staff. Witness, he said, the council's tools are dead. Their domes are broken. Their marks are cracking. Masked villagers began to lift their hands to their faces. One by one, they removed their masks. Velxira's chest tightened as she smelled them fully for the first time. Not as prey, not as shame, as people. Kaervald turned toward Velxira, blood still dark on his side, face tight with pain he refused to show. He stopped a step away and did not reach for her. May I? He asked, voice hoarse. Velxira swallowed. She knew what he meant. Touch, comfort, something more dangerous than battle. She took a slow breath. Yes, she said. Kaervald's hands rose to her cheeks, gentle. His thumbs brushed the edge of her jaw like he was afraid she would disappear if he pressed too hard. Velxira's body shivered, heat curling low and soft, not forced, not triggered by smoke or red moon, but by being asked and choosing. Kaervald leaned in. His lips brushed hers once, a careful question made into contact, and then he pulled back slightly as if waiting to see if she would flinch, if she would regret. Velxira did not flinch. She kissed him again, still gentle, still controlled, and her scent rose like warm smoke, not a beacon, not a command, just her relief spilling out. Kaervald's breath shook. He rested his forehead against hers for a heartbeat. I am yours only if you want it, he whispered. Velxira's eyes burned. I do not want ownership. Kaervald nodded. Then I will not give it. Sorint stood nearby, watching with that calm, strange steadiness, but there was something softer in his eyes now, like a door unlatched. Velxira turned toward him, chest tight. You stayed. Sorint's voice was quiet. I told you, I do not like cages. Velxira stepped closer to Sorint and held out her hand. He looked at it for a long moment, as if weighing every implication. Is this choice, he asked, voice low, or is this instinct trying to build a pack quickly because it is scared? Velxira swallowed. She forced herself to breathe and feel her own body honestly. It is choice, she said, and it is gratitude, and it is wanting you near, not as a spare, not as a shadow, as you. Sorint's fingers closed around hers, warm and steady. Then I accept, with one condition. Velxira's throat tightened. What? Sorint's gaze held hers. We speak, always, we do not let scent replace words. Velxira exhaled shakily. Agreed. Kaervald watched them with attention that surprised Velxira. Not jealousy, not ownership, fear maybe, that he would be pushed out of a choice he had finally been offered. Velxira turned back to him and squeezed his hand, then Sorint's, anchoring herself between them like a bridge. No one is left behind, she said softly. Not unless they choose to leave. Kaervald's eyes shut for a brief second, and when he opened them there was something like relief in them, raw and unguarded. Weeks later, the world did not become perfect, but it became possible. Word spread that forced marks were cracking, that shells were falling apart, that the council's domes failed in certain territories, that a benefactor saint had been dragged from his podium and forced to answer to the mouths he had called resource. Kaervald and the exiles did not rebuild the old council. They built a pact, not carved into a throne, carved into rules that could not survive without consent. Marks became contracts, witnessed and revocable. Pack membership became chosen, not inherited by threat. Omegas stopped hiding their faces, though some still wore masks by preference, not fear. Kaervald's pack returned, battered but alive, drawn by the collapse of council control and by Kaervald's refusal to let his people be cleansed quietly. Some had scars from forced command. Some carried shame that was not theirs. Velxira learned to undo what she could slowly, with permission, never as performance, never as spectacle. Each time a mark cracked and fell away, she felt the ancient voice inside her weaken a little, like a tyrant starving when it can no longer feed on obedience. One evening, long after the ash heaps had been cleared from the ridge, Velxira sat outside a small house built at the edge of the woods, where the standing stones could be seen through the trees. Kaervald sat beside her, his wound healed into a thick scar. Sorint leaned against the doorway, watching the sky as if he could still hear paths in the wind. Velxira inhaled and let her scent rise, gentle, a quiet presence rather than a flare. No voice inside her demanded return. No gate called her name. Only her own breath, steady. Kaervald's hand hovered near hers on the bench. Velxira placed her fingers over his, choosing the contact, and felt his whole body relax as if he had been holding tension for years. Sorint stepped closer and rested his hand on Velxira's shoulder, brief and grounding, then withdrew, giving space again, as if consent was a language he intended to keep speaking. Velxira looked at both of them, throat tight with the strange softness of peace. "I used to think being smelled meant being owned," she whispered. Kaervald's voice was low. "And now," Velxira swallowed, "now it means I exist, and I get to decide who gets close enough to know." Sorint's mouth curved slightly. "Good." Velxira stared out at the standing stones, old and stubborn, and felt the shape of the new world forming, not from sermons, not from domes, not from chains, from choice. "Now nobody hunts," she said softly. "Now we choose."